Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Town of South Windsor for Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Tonight, we have 3 public hearings. Our order of business will be first to hear from the applicants, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public. First, those in favor, and then those against or having questions or comments. And then we will hear from commissioners. If everybody could put their cell phones to vibrate or mute, we would appreciate it. Could we have the reading of the public notice?
Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number 1, application 22-15P, Lightning Fitness Expansion, 85 Nutmeg Road. Request for a modification to the special exception approval to increase the recreational square footage from 24,000 square feet to 28,000 square feet. This is on property located at 85 Nutmeg Road, Industrial Zone. Number 2 is application 22-07P, Evergreen Walk LLC. Multifamily text amendment. A request to amend the specific requirements for multifamily residential use in the Buckland Gateway Development Zone, including sections 4.2.15A.2E to increase the number of units permitted to 365 and modify section 4.2.15A.2C to modify the criteria for achieving the required 2-to-1 residential to commercial ratio for mixed-use developments within this zone. And application number 3 is 22-08P, Evergreen Walk LLC, a request to modify the Evergreen Walk General Plan of Development in accordance with section 4.2.15D.2 and approval of a special exception pursuant to section 4.2.15D.1 for a 165-unit residential development for a portion of 151 Buckland Road within the Evergreen Walk, known as Unit 7C, and being approximately 2,000 feet west of Buckland Road, 1,000 feet north of Smith Street, Buckland Road Gateway Development Zone. To view this meeting, please tune into Channel 16 if your provider is Cox Cable, or go to gmedia.swagit.com/live. Copies of the applications are on file in the Office of the Town Clerk and Planning Department and online at southwindsor-ct.gov/planning-department/planning-and-zoning commission-applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 p.m., or call 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Pasakonis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you very much. At this time, we do have Commissioner Foley, who is out this evening, so I'm going to seek Commissioner Carey for Commissioner Foley. Okay, our first application tonight is applicant 22-15P, Lightning Fitness. Is there someone to represent the applicant? Good evening. If you could, just make sure your microphone is on, and if you could put it on the podium in front of you, just push the button. The red light will be on once you push it. Correct. Thank you. And it works best if you're 3 to 6 inches from the microphone, so you can always raise up the end a little.
I'll try to speak clearly for you guys. So,
okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francis Vaca. I'm a professional engineer at the BSC Group in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I'm here on behalf of the owners of 85 Nutmeg Road, and we are here specifically requesting the approval to increase the recreational square footage from 24,000 square feet to 28,000 square feet on the top floor of the facility. This is a representation of the facility right here. This darker line is the building perimeter. Currently, the building is an industrial zone. It is predominantly zoned as warehouse. There is some office space, and then the special exception was previously approved for recreational use of the building, in this case, particularly a fitness studio. It was originally smaller in size, and then they are currently wishing to expand. Their footprint in total will be 27,700 square feet. The increase is their resulting request to increase the size needs to increase the size of the special exception to 28,000 square feet of the recreational space in the building. The only item in particular I would like to speak on related to that is because this is an industrial area, we had to confirm that the parking is adequate for the increased zone, for the increased size. The space associated with a assembly, amusement, or recreation space is one space per 250 square feet of building use. Currently, the parcel has 197 parking spaces. The development to increase the size would require 111. Those areas represented in green, I know it's hard to see from far away, but those areas represented in green are the 111 spaces that are allocated to the Lightning Fitness. Of those spaces, 5 of the spaces will be utilized for handicap parking in accordance with Connecticut Building Code. The remaining office and warehouse space in the parcel takes up the remainder up to 187 spaces that are allocated. That leaves the remaining 10 spaces that are unallocated in the building as swing space. So in conclusion, increasing the size of the parcel, increasing the size of the use for the recreational space does not affect the parking whatsoever. Therefore, we are respectfully requesting the approval, the increase of 4,000 square feet to 28,000 square feet for the athletic portion of the building. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to Jeff Folger, who's sitting in for our Director of Planning.
Thank you. And I'll read a report that was prepared by Michelle on this application. Application 22-15P Lightning Fitness. The request for a special exception to Table 4.1.1A and Article 7.13 of the zoning regulations in a site plan for the expansion of an existing gym facility located in a portion of the existing building at 85 Nutmeg Road South, I-zone. The PZC had previously approved 24,000 square feet for recreational use, and the request is to expand the use to 28,000 square feet. The PZC approved a CrossFit facility in 2015 and the Airborne Fitness facility in 2016 for this location. Both of these businesses are no longer operating, and the Lightning Fitness facility has taken advantage of that approved square footage and currently operate a 16,000 square foot facility on the second floor. The applicant's proposal is to utilize approximately 28,000 square feet. A floor plan has been provided that shows the existing facility and proposed expansion. The facility operates 24/7. The parking requirement for this use is 111 spaces, and the proposal is to increase the parking to 111 spaces as is needed. There are no exterior site improvements proposed with this application. The site is lit by building-mounted lights as well as parking lot lighting. The site is served by public water and public sewers. WPCA approval is not required as the site is already connected to sewers. Any new building or freestanding signage would require a sign permit. The applicant has consulted the fire marshal and building official regarding the proposed changes to the facility. A building permit will be required for the change of use. If this application is approved, the planning department has no additional modifications to request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments on this application.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I will turn to members of the public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this application in favor of the application? Please step forward now. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against this application or have questions or comments they'd like to make? Please step forward now. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Viteri. Okay. I'll ask Commissioner Dexter to read a letter into the record.
This is from Konstantinou, 64 Amanda Way, Tallinn, Connecticut. Dear Ms. Light, I am the owner of 85 Nutmeg Road South. The property consists of 108,000 square feet, of which about 29,000 on the second floor is the newer part of the building. This part of the building was improved to house a gym, Lightning Fitness. The gym occupies 16,000 square feet. The remaining space on the second floor is not occupied. The gym expressed the interest in space, about 11,500 square feet. Not any new construction or buildups or changes are intended. We are working with the fire marshal and building officials to meet code. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Now we will turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle. Oh, we already did your Viteri. Commissioner Viteri?
Just a question. I know that it says that you wanted to go from 24,000 square feet to 28,000 square feet. When I look at the drawing that you gave, you're currently only using 16,000 square feet. So the other 8,000 that was already approved, that was just not being utilized, but
The original, the original design that was approved, there were a previous CrossFit in the basement, there was a previous other facility that accounted for the recreational area, and those have since left. The 16,000 was for the fitness, the Lightning Fitness itself, so that's where the additional originally was.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner LeBlanc?
I'm all good. Not that many comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter?
No comment.
Commissioner Cavagnaro?
No comment.
Commissioner Carey?
No comments.
Okay, it's to me. Okay, thank you for your presentation. I had one question about the facility operating 24/7. Jeff, when did that, do you know when that took place? Because from what I understand, the two previous applications, both were approved with operating hours. And we don't typically just switch hours without some type of approval.
Right, I'm not aware of what the change was or the origin of her comment on this.
Okay. And just for the record, from what I understand, Airborne Fitness was Monday through Friday, 10 to 8 p.m., and weekends, 10 to 6 p.m. And the CrossFit was 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. How long have you been operating in the building? Excuse me, you'd have to come up to the microphone if you'd like to speak, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Konstantinos. I'm the owner. The Lightning Fitness moved in February 2021, and since then they function as 24/7. That's my understanding.
Okay. Thank you for that information. Jeff, would we have any complaints since they started operation that we're aware of?
No, we've had no complaints on either the operation or the site at all, as far as zoning is concerned.
Okay. I just had another question for our engineer, if you would. If you could go over one more time the square footage. This is all on the second floor, correct, or no?
The square footage of the Lightning Fitness is all on the second floor, yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm just curious about the floor makeup. And I understand, you know, it was built for an office, and that's probably a certain amount of pounds per square foot. And I know you guys got some people that do some intense training over there. And, you know, deadlifting in excess of whatever, 600-700 pounds.
There's, if you look at the makeup of the building, it's a rectangle, and then on the southeast portion, there's a smaller section that is considered to be the office portion. The main portion of the building was originally zoned and designed as warehouse, and a warehouse design, I can't speak to the architectural of it, but warehouse design would have been designed to be able to withstand whatever the forces associated with the storage of materials that I would imagine would be larger than anyone that would be performing any type of fitness type routine or so on.
Okay. I hope that's accurate. Okay, as far as the hours, I know it's an industrial zone. I don't have any problem with going to 24/7 hours, but I believe that should be listed as an approval condition that it's allowed, because we had something in writing before. You know, maybe this transition took place during COVID, and that might not have been discussed, but it should be just noted as probably approval condition number 7. So, okay. Commissioners, any other questions, comments, concerns? Staff, any other questions, comments, concerns? The applicant's all set? Okay, then we will close the public hearing at 7:18 p.m. And this is on our agenda to act on later tonight. Thank you. Okay. Our next item on our agenda is application 22-07P, Evergreen Walk LLC. Good evening, and if you could, just make sure your microphone is on, Alan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Mr. Folger, Mr. Doolittle, and Ms. O'Neill. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Alter & Pearson, and I appear before you this evening on behalf of the owner applicant, Evergreen Walk LLC. I'm going to wear my mask. Myself and at least one other person is just getting over COVID, so I understand with your rules that you recommend that we do it for a certain period of time after. I have tested negative a couple of times, but with a PCR, so I just want to be on record with that. I appear before you this evening, again, on behalf of Evergreen Walk LLC, concerning, there's 3 applications, but essentially there's 2. One is a zone text amendment, as you're aware. The other is a request to amend the general plan and a special exception. I have been told, Michelle Light, before she left on her trip, indicated that the commission wanted to have two separate hearings, the first hearing being for the text amendment and the second hearing being for the amendment to the general plan and the special exception. So we have prepared to do the hearings in that sequence, and we'll get back to that in a moment. At the outset, I do have two procedural matters. One is I have copies of the certified mailings that I did to the Connecticut Department of Public Health, as well as the two water companies that may or may not have watersheds within the Evergreen Walk. So I'd like to put a copy of that. I don't know if I give that to Jeff or Caitlin.
Good.
The second is a procedural matter, and as the commission is aware, well, we did have a prior application, and there was a comment during the vote on that by Commissioner Dexter, and I did put this in the cover letter for this evening, and I did indicate to your town planner, director of planning, that I would bring it up procedurally at the outset so that you could address it, Commissioner Dexter, and specifically, and I tried my best to write from the video, the YouTube. You did state when you were voting in the negative for the text amendment with the prior one back on January 11th that, quote, "I am concerned about 2 more kids in school. I don't care if it's 3, but I have a concern, and I would just respectfully submit to Commissioner Dexter, because I understand that you decide, and that's how the process works here in South Windsor, as it does in most other towns and most commissions. But I would respectfully submit that that does indicate a predetermination that an application that does involve residential units with potentially school-aged children, as this does, both the text amendment and the special exception, and it would indicate to me, and I certainly to my client, that there would be predetermination concerning it based on that, and would respectfully request that you recuse yourself from participating in the 2 applications.
And I appreciate that, Attorney Smith. I've served on this commission for almost 10 years, and I feel I've always made decisions objectively and with an open mind. So for that reason, I've decided to remain seated for this application, as I feel strongly that I can continue to do the same.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to bring that up. Continuing on, and I take exception, but it's your choice, Commissioner Dexter. Again, we do have the 3 applications with the 2 separate public hearings, and Alan, we do have a PowerPoint.
Just, if I may for a minute, the letters that you submitted really should have been submitted for your other application, because they're not really regarding the text amendment itself. So I just want to be clear that this presentation, you're addressing text amendment items. So if you could do your best to stay within that parameter.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In a moment, after a couple of slides, I'll address that relative to the presenters that we're proposing for the commission this evening with the text amendment, and I'd like to be afforded the opportunity to address that concern with you and the commission at that point. But I just have a little bit of an overview before...
Overview is fine.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, we do have the 3 applications. The first is a zone text amendment to the Buckland Road Gateways Development Zone, and specifically there's different components to that. One is to limit this particular zone text amendment provisions to properties located in the GD or Gateway Zone. I'll refer to it as GD if I can, on the westerly side of Buckland. The second is to clarify the 2-to-1 aggregate of residential to commercial floor area provision. The third is to require an affordable housing component when an application is submitted pursuant to these provisions. And then the second, and the last final point, is to increase the cap on the number of multifamily units in the GD zone from, as you're aware, today there is a cap of 200 units, and we're requesting that that be increased to 365 units. The two other items that will be the subject of the second public hearing, again, the amendment to the general plan of development and a special exception for a specific site-specific, 165-unit multifamily residential community. So staying with the zone text amendment at the moment, as the commission is aware, we did have a prior application that we had submitted. The commission did deny that back in January of this year, January 11th. And I respectfully submit we did make changes, and we do have new information for the commission with regards to this modified zone text amendment. Again, the first and foremost is to limit the application of these provisions to the westerly side of Buckland Road in the GD zone. The second, again, to clarify the residential commercial ratio formula. The third, require an affordable housing component. And if you recall, during the first application process, Commissioner Dexter, who served on the Affordable Housing Working Group, did request that my client consider adding that component, and my client did. And we'll get to that in a moment relative to your newly adopted Affordable Housing Plan. The fourth is that we are applying the Commission's recently adopted Affordable Housing Plan, incorporating many of the plan's stated goals and purposes, and we'll address some of those in a moment. And then the fifth is to consider additional information from the Goldman & York, provided in the Goldman & York Planning and Design report. It's a municipal fiscal and economic impact analysis that's dated April 26, 2022, and we'll get to that and come back to that in a moment. In the prior zone text amendment, reasons that we heard for denial was that the text amendment could be utilized by other applicants in other areas in the GD zone. There were concerns relative to the text amendment's potential impact on open space and wetlands, and then the potential for school-aged children. The team this evening that we'll be hearing from after I finish completing my overview to the commission is we'll hear from Mr. Alan Lamson, AICP certified FLB Architecture and Planning, who will provide you with an overview of the specifics relative to the zone text amendment. Now, relative to the text amendment, Mr. Chairman, we do have our civil engineer and our traffic engineer who will just make a brief presentation that the text amendment, which is in the GD zone and specifically would be addressing the properties on the westerly side of Buckland Road, Evergreen Walk, that the text amendment, by changing the commercial component and preventing additional residential use, will not adversely impact the public health safety, which is one of the standards, as you're aware, for a zone text amendment. So their testimony will be limited to that, which is similar to what you'll hear again with the special exception and the amendment to the general plan, but it is geared towards the zone text amendment and the test for a zone text amendment here in Connecticut. And to that end, Michael Goldman of Goldman & York is here this evening, and he will be providing a summary of the report. And again, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I think we have to remember that the text amendment does apply, Commissioner Wagner, does apply to a certain, certainly wait for a minute there. So again, the text amendment does apply to a certain area of town in the GD zone, and specifically, essentially, to the Evergreen Walk section in the GD zone, and it will be allowing for additional residential, an additional or expanded residential use for multifamily use in that zone. And one of the things that it is doing is to complement the existing commercial and retail and restaurant uses that are in that zone in Evergreen Walk. And I know that Mr. Goldman is prepared to address some of those issues with the commission and provide an overview of his report to that end. Again, how the zone text amendment will benefit will be consistent with Section 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes and your comprehensive plan, and I'm just going to walk through in a moment your POCD and your affordable housing plan. Your POCD in particular having as a goal to have a residential complementing the commercial use in a mixed-use form and setting. And I've been coming to the commission for quite a number of years now with Mr. Lamson with similar proposals. And when we came the first time asking for a residential component, as I indicated to you, and I know that you know this, but you do have a very unique use with Evergreen Walk. I mean, I'm Canaan Monday, then Fairfield, I'm all over the place, and it really is a unique asset that you have here in the town. And I think you'll hear from Mr. Goman, there's a fairly significant vacancy rate at the moment at Evergreen Walk when it comes to some of the commercial uses. And one of the, and Mr. Folger's here, I know your Director of Planning was out at the National APA conference that I normally go to. But one of the things we hear is, you know, at those conferences is that it's very important to have a residential component, a boots on the ground, supporting your commercial uses in your municipality. It can be downtown Hartford. Sarah Bronin has been, with that commission, has really been pushing to get residential boots on the ground downtown Hartford. Why? Because that will support what is basically a dying commercial component in our capital city. And I think Mr. Goman will express to you this evening how something in a similar vein is happening at Evergreen Walk, and that this is something to consider that we didn't have for you the first go around with this text amendment that will permit, subject to a special exception permit, which is separate and distinct, but it would permit an additional use, an additional component with the multifamily by expanding the cap from 200 to 365. So I would respectfully submit that that's a very important, and it's called for in your POCD, and you talk about it in your affordable housing plan, and I'll get to that in a moment. But that's what Mr. Goman will be addressing. And I know there's, and if there's an issue with the school-aged children, we can hold off on that till the special exception, but I would respectfully submit that most of what's in that report with the economic benefit of allowing for this additional expanded residential use in the GD zone is consistent, again, with your comprehensive plan, your regulations and map, your POCD, and your affordable housing plan, as well as Section 8-2 and the goals there. I know that, as you're aware, there were amendments to 8-2, which really generated you to do your affordable housing plan, which all the towns throughout the state are actually doing that for that reason. So I bring that up now, Mr. Chairman, before I was going to, my next couple of slides are just to talk about your affordable housing plan and your POCD and how the text amendment is consistent with many of the goals and recommendations in both of those plans that have been adopted by this commission as guiding documents when you're reviewing specific proposals such as this zone text amendment in the GD zone. So I would respectfully submit that that format for the text amendment is appropriate for the presentation this evening. There will be some overlap across the board that we can either incorporate into the second public hearing, or we can just walk through some of that again. But at that point, we will be dealing with the site-specific proposal, and Mr. Rappaport, who is the proposed developer, as you're aware, will be walking you through the specifics with the site development.
Okay.
So.
Like I said, when you talk about the economics of it, that should not really be part of the text amendment itself. I understand you're looking to justify or promote the change, but in talking about the specific text amendment, which is what the first application is, I'm asking you to do your best not to get into the minutia of all the economic. Okay?
If I can get through the next part of my presentation, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, maybe we can either revisit what we were just talking about at that point, just so we can narrow down the balance of the presentation. But I would just like to be able to, if I may, just, and this all has to do with the text amendment.
Okay.
But just to bring home the point that the economic benefit to allow the residential component to be expanded in the GD zone, and in particular in Evergreen Walk, is a benefit. It's not. It's a benefit for the community and for the public health and well-being of the community. But why don't I go through the POCD and quickly, and your affordability plan, affordable housing plan. Excuse me, not affordability plan. And then we could revisit that if you'd like to at that point.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. So again, the text amendment, you're very familiar with the standard. And first of all, we do have a new component based on the affordable housing plan, but a text amendment is to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. And as you're aware, your comprehensive plan consists of your zoning regulations, your existing GD zone, and your zone map. And secondly, that the text amendment is consistent with the goals and objectives of Section 8-2 and not result in an adverse impact to a public health interest in the public health or safety. 3, that it's consistent with your POCD. I'm not going to read it. It's been adopted and amended many times. And number 4, that it's consistent with your recently adopted, and I don't even think it's actually effective for another week maybe, but you did vote to approve it, and it's very well done, by the way, your South Windsor 2022 to 27 affordable housing plan. And as part of the overview, what I would like to do is just start and just quickly a little overview of your affordable housing plan. And this is maybe more for the public than it is for the commission, because you just went through this. The first point, from my Psychology 101, I really enjoyed the Maslow's hierarchy and the need for affordable housing and housing opportunities for the average citizen with regards to planning for housing choices. Again, the text amendment is providing for additional multifamily housing in the GD zone. And here, this is important. This is the community benefits. This is right out of the affordability plan, pages 3 and 5. And you talk about providing greater housing options and choices, to promote diversity, to provide a place for for your workforce to live. And then the final point is to support your local businesses, to have a stronger economy. And in particular, with this zone text amendment, to have that in the westerly side of the GD zone, which obviously would be the Evergreen Walk section of town. The third, a need. This is right out of your report at page 6. 1 in 4 of your neighbors is what your report and you, in your report, refer to as cost burden, where they spend more than 30% of their income towards housing. And another item that you indicated in your report that you would like to see more of is deed-restricted affordable housing. And I think that it's fair to say that you talk about when you have deed-restricted housing, you have a little bit more control. Somebody is locked in this case as proposed, and as many of your other zones, some of your overlays that you have, and get to that in a moment, locked in for 40 years, a minimum of 40 years. And as your report indicates, you only have 9 out of approximately 10,804 housing units that are deed restricted as affordable. I think the report indicated there might be 2 or 3 more coming online. But the long and the short of it is, you are looking for deed restricted affordable housing. And again, that's something that's included in the zone text amendment. As far as the text amendment being consistent with your affordable housing plan, number 1, you do in your plan indicate that you like to see an affordable housing component in your regulations and in proposals. And specifically, you make reference to 10% of the units being at the 80% AMI for a period of 40 years. And that, again, that's what's being proposed with this zone text amendment, which is similar to your CCOZ, CNOZ, and your the SMAUD, the SOM-OZ, section, and those are, from what in reviewing your regs, appear to be overlay zones. And again, those do mandate a minimum of 10% affordable housing at the 80% AMI. Again, something that is proposed with this text amendment. Your affordability plan, you indicate that you want to incentivize applications where you have more deed-restricted affordable housing through the commission zoning regulations. Again, that is proposed with this text amendment. 3, you have a location guide at page 22, designated areas for locating higher density housing options and choices, including affordable housing, and that does take in quite a bit of the Evergreen Walk development, or the Evergreen Walk community on the westerly side of Buckland. And 4th, you conclude, well, you have at page 15, that your overall goal of the affordable housing plan, and this is a quote, seek to provide for a variety of housing options and choices in South Windsor for people and households of all ages, incomes, lifestyles, and life stages. And again, I would respectfully submit that I think it's readily ascertainable that these points are all included and addressed in the zone text amendment that's before you this evening relative to the GD zone. So again, I respectfully submit that it's consistent with your affordable housing plan, which I respectfully submit is one of your considerations in reviewing this zone text amendment. As to your POCD, again, and this was something I was discussing before, is that the proposed text amendment promotes new housing opportunity options within close proximity to adjacent commercial uses within Evergreen Walk, and that the residential component is to enhance the viability of adjacent commercial uses, which Mr. Goman will talk about. Again, something that your affordable housing plan is looking for too, to support your existing commercial uses in town, to make it a stronger economy, to make South Windsor, quite frankly, stronger in an economic sense. Again, your POCD talks about promoting mixed-use communities where you have pedestrian connectivity and the use of nearby open space enhancements, and Mr. Lamson will touch upon that. And that was one of the issues and concerns that was brought up with the first application, or the prior one. The 4th, mixed-use community being, again, within close proximity to bus service and an arterial roadway. Clearly, the proposal would accommodate that. You make reference in your POCD to the policies and principles from the state growth management principles relative to regional planning. Again, that's something that's really unique about Evergreen Walk, is that it is a lifestyle community unto itself with a number of commercial uses. You have restaurants, retail, and residential. And there, as we know, there's not much left. There's not many units left. There's not a lot of space left. So adding this additional residential component with the zone text amendment would be a shot in the arm for the GD zone, and in particular Evergreen Walk. And again, that would be consistent with promoting mixed-use developments here in your town, having the residential supporting the commercial.
Excuse me a second.
Yes, sir.
Did you bring copies of your PowerPoint presentation for the commissioners? Caitlin, you have those? Okay.
If this is continued, we can get you copies.
Okay. Thank you.
Apologies, but we can get that to you.
It's a lot easier sitting up here to follow along and have it right in front of you, not behind you.
I know. It's great for me, but for you, it's like when I was a kid with church, everything was reversed and you couldn't see anything. But anyhow, I apologize for that. And this is actually the review for the general plan and special exception that we're not going to do now. But what I'd like to do, if you don't have any questions for me, is turn the floor over to Mr. Lamson. Again, we'll hear from Mr. Lamson on the specifics with the text amendment. We'll hear from Mr. Bominger, Jen, with regards to the civil, and Mr. Mitchell with regards to the traffic, because as we know, Evergreen Walk has a general plan, it has a state certificate, for traffic, it has an infrastructure for utilities, it's all there. And if this text amendment is permitted, there's very limited area within Evergreen Walk where it can be utilized. And just to demonstrate to the commission that is in place, it won't have an adverse effect on traffic, be less than with the commercial, and that the utility services are there, so you don't have to bring sewer and water to this particular area where this text amendment would apply. And
But
then
again, those are things that are not part of the text amendment. Sewer, water, whether it's there or not, that's not part of our decision on writing language or approving language.
I just would respectfully disagree for what the reasons that I said, but it's within your discretion, obviously, to decide whether you want to have that added as part of this record with the text amendment. And again, the same thing with Mr. Goman with regards to promoting that mixed-use component, which is clearly in your POCD and your affordable housing plan in the text amendment, and having a stronger economy and having that mixed-use component to support, having the residential support the commercial, is something that he can focus on in his presentation relative to the text amendment. But I just don't want to have people come up, Mr. Chairman, without explaining again what our speakers will be doing in light of the fact that you have brought this up. And I just don't want to, I'd rather, if we can address that now, with these limitations on what their presentation would be relative to the issues for the text amendment. I'm just trying to do that and be upfront.
I understand what you're trying to do, but it really needs to be about the text amendment specifically, not specific about examples, but about the language of the text amendment.
Well, and to that end, Mr. Chairman, with the, especially with the mixed-use component that is called for, I mean, that's what's being proposed, obviously, is you have the GD zone, you have commercial restaurants, a variety of different uses, all the uses that are out at Evergreen Walk today, that you have approved over a number of years, and the residential component that you did approve a number of years ago, and we do have the 200 units there. And again, this text amendment is specific to allow for an increase in that residential component in the GD zone, which is the text amendment, and subject to certain requirements, such as the commercial residential ratio, as well as having an affordable component that's not there today. And again, our people are addressing that specific issue. We're not talking about the site development with the 165 units and that would be part of the next public hearing. So I would respectfully submit that having two engineers testify on the infrastructure being there to support the text amendment would be no different than creating a new zone, Mr. Chairman, and an overlay, and then permitting a certain area of town. And one of the requirements is that there be public water and sewer, and you don't have public water and sewer there. And I would think you probably want to have testimony as to, well, how's this going to work if we don't even have public water and sewer there? How's this going to impact, if you're going to have potentially,
I think that'll all be covered under your general plan, correct?
Well, that would be specifically with the 160, with units 7C, it would be.
Right. Typically on a text amendment, you don't have a living example of what's happening. You are putting in language specific to the regulations. I know you're aware of this.
Oh, yeah, but it's not a new overlay zone. It's essentially it's a zone already, and we're talking about expanding a permitted use that's subject to special exception approval. That specific use is subject to special exception approval and raises its own issues. But allowing for an additional use in a zone, Mr. Chairman, where the benefits of having that use, I mean, if this is what I do, but that it makes sense to me that we should present to the commission, and the commission would want to hear how this text amendment is consistent with these plans that you've developed as guidance documents. In fact, your plans have said you implement these goals by amending your regulations, and that's what we're proposing to do. And again, your POCD calls out for promoting mixed-use developments, and your affordability plan talks about promoting residential use and housing that will support your existing commercial uses, which is exactly what we have in the GD zone. Not specifically to Unit 7C, but that's what's in the GD zone, and that's what's being proposed to the commission. And quite honestly, that's why we're back, is that we were hoping to provide this additional information to you. Your affordability plan speaks for itself. You just went through it. You and Commissioner Dexter served on the working group, if I recall what I read in it. And so we're back to explain how this text amendment does meet those goals and recommendations that you individually and you as a commission as a whole have adopted.
We've adopted them, but we have not inserted them into the regulations yet. They are an advisory document, so they are not something that we can enforce at this time. If the applicant is willingly putting them in, that's great. But we need to stick to the text amendment.
Well,
Mr. Chair, may I comment on this subject?
Sure.
To me, making a text amendment is a policy decision. So the precise wording and how it implements that policy, of course, is very important. But it's also important for us to understand, the economic and other implications of changing the way that piece of land that area is going to be used. So to me, a little bit more than just looking at the wording in here. What are the implications of changing the maximum ratio? What are the implications of putting housing where we previously had commercial? I think those implications are very important to making our decision.
Making the decision on the language.
On the text amendment, is this a policy change that we want to make? And I want to understand the implications of that policy.
I understand what you're saying, or I believe I do, but in formulating that language, whether it's a boom for economic development or not, we have the specific text language that we have to approve or not approve.
Of course, I agree. We have to approve the language, and the language has to be shown to work, and it also has to be shown to be a policy change. That change in policy is something that we do or do not want to do. So I want to hear information about the implications of the change, not just whether the language is precise enough or whatever. Now, maybe our guest could explain how each of these elements here achieves those goals, but I think it's, to me, it's more than just looking at language. It is a policy change. We need to understand the implications of that.
Right, you're looking at one example, though. Just because their end result example might fit your goal or what the goals might be, doesn't mean that any possible future example would also fit that criteria.
Sure.
Attorney Smith?
And again, Mr. Chairman, maybe just to clarify it a little better, when you look at a text amendment, again, there's the comprehensive plan, A2, 8-2, the enabling legislation. There's a whole series of goals and objectives, which is what prompted you to do your affordable housing plan with the new amendments. The text amendment has to be consistent with your POCD. It's one of the things you look at.
Right.
You drafted your POCD and you said, we would like to do certain things in the long run for our community here in South Windsor. And And one of the ways to do it is to make amendments to promote these certain items, the mixed-use development. I'm not going to go through. And the same thing with your affordable housing plan. We have, and you have a whole series. I mean, we know how it works. Your POCD, your affordable housing plan, Section 8-2 says, here are the goals, here are the objectives that you're supposed to consider when you're considering a zone text amendment or a zone change. And I just respectfully submit that, and I don't, I'm being serious. I mean, I'm really sincere about this. When you have a text amendment, those are the things that you're looking at, and those are the things that we're talking about. Is it consistent with it? Is it going to have an adverse effect on the public health safety? Does it meet your goals and objectives that this commission has said you would like to see for this community, this town, through your regulations? And our burden before you this evening, and that's why we're back. I don't think we did as good a job the first time as I think we could do this time, and that's why we're here, is to demonstrate how this text amendment actually meets the goals and objectives that this commission has set forth in your POCD over the years, and most recently in your affordable housing plan. And that's all we're trying to do. The specific site development proposal, we're going to address that at the second public hearing. But there is a component of the Goldman-York report prepared by Dr. Poland, and Mike Goldman is here this evening because Dr. Poland is away, was unable to be here. Mr. Goldman's report will focus on just what we're talking about, promoting that mixed-use component. And you'll hear on the in the GD zone, which is what this is all about. It's the GD zone, westerly side of Buckland. It takes in a number of properties, but we all know it's what everybody refers to as Evergreen Walk. There's individual units, they're owned by different people, but it is that area of your community. And that's all we're trying to demonstrate to the commission, is this new information that hopefully you can consider and will consider when thinking about the text amendment to allow for this type of use. If you were to adopt that, then the second component would be the actual proposal with the special exception, and you would be looking at that under your special exception criteria and your criteria to amend the general plan at Evergreen Walk. Not the same thing as the text amendment, with being consistent with your POCD and your affordability, excuse me, I keep saying affordability plan, that I draft all the time in support of an application in 830G, but whatever. But that's what we're talking about, Mr. Chairman, and I know we've spent some time at it, but again, I do think that's why, when I popped up the slide, the standard for a zone text amendment, that's the burden that we have to address for this commission, and that's all we're trying to demonstrate, is give you the information. As with any expert testimony that you hear on whether something's going to adversely impact an intersection or not, that's your discretion. You can pick and choose what you might want to believe or take into consideration when voting on the text amendment. But we're just trying to, again, hopefully we can sustain our burden of proof to the commission and demonstrate that it is consistent with these various documents and the goals and objectives that you have stated you would like to see addressed when a zone text amendment or a zone change is proposed to this commission. So that's really all we're trying to do. I'm not trying to do something, an end run or anything. We're just trying to focus on these points. So I just respectfully request that we be able to present those items to the commission. For whatever they're worth to the commission, it's going to be short. We probably, and it's important to address it, but I don't think it will take that long to go through that.
Okay, thank you.
So with
Proceed.
the permission of the chair, I'll turn the presentation over to Mr. Lamson, and Alan will walk you through the text amendment component specifically. And thank you for taking the time to review these issues with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, I'm Alan Lamson, Vice President and Planning Director of FLB Architecture and Planning, with offices in Manchester. Just because by the definition that's in the text amendment that's been proposed to you, it's related to the Gateway Development Zone that's on the west side of Buckland Road. And this plan, which is the general plan of development, just kind of for those who aren't totally familiar with the parcel, because there have been a lot of membership changes over the years. This is basically the piece of the property that this amendment would apply to. I should point out, just for the record, I did it last time, that there are several things that this commission has asked us to do over the years in the way of other improvements to Evergreen Walk as part of the development of the commercial and residential and office areas there. And we have completed virtually all of them. As you know, last year we completed the trail system in Evergreen Walk. I'm happy to report that it survived the winter, except for one place, which we will address this spring. We also completed the construction of Tamarack Avenue, and we have constructed the berm in the southwest corner of the site, which is there to help buffer the residential property adjacent to Evergreen Walk. We have not landscaped it yet. We're waiting to, winter came, number one. Number two, we're waiting to see what might happen with that piece of property before we actually landscape the berm, in case we have to make modifications to the configuration. So regarding one of the issues that came up at the last hearing, and I just wanted to be, just for clarification purposes, had to do with open space on Evergreen Walk, and I'm just going to touch it briefly and then we'll move on.
Okay,
Do you want me to skip it? I will skip it.
yeah,
I'll do it
the
next time.
berm, the open
I'll do it.
space,
I'll do it next time.
not pertinent.
Okay, no problem. So, regarding the text amendment, the proposed regulation, there are really 5 parts to the changes to the regulation. The first is that the current regulation sets the number of units that can be constructed in the Gateway Development Zone. It's currently at 200. This regulation proposes to raise that ceiling from 200 to 365 units, and it would be for the entire Gateway Development Zone. The second part is to modify the concept of the plan that provides the commercial offset from being the development area plan, which is very loosely defined in the regulations, to the general plan of development. The feeling was that for us to show what the offset is, we should do it at the general plan level so that everybody understands what is being considered in the 2-to-1 ratio that currently exists, so that we don't get to the engineering site plan stage where a significant amount of energy and money has been spent to create a site plan, and then have to have a discussion about what's included in the offset for the 2-to-1 ratio. So we just tied it to the general plan so that it occurs earlier in the process. So given that, the status of the current 2-to-1 ratio only applies to the current tempo apartments that are at Evergreen Walk. There are 3 parcels in there that provide the 2-to-1 offset. One is the hotel, which I have to report, the same as I did 5 months ago, is nearly completed. I'll just stop right there. I have been told that they are anticipating completion in the 3rd quarter of this year. So that's one of the parcels that provided offset to the tempo apartments. The second was the daycare facility that's been constructed, and the third is what we refer to as Unit 7E, which is immediately north of the daycare facility and is being actively marketed for commercial use. It's a very small piece. It will take a special user who wants to purchase it, but it's been focused specifically to be for commercial use. That's the offset for tempo. So nothing that we're proposing changes any of that. The second item is that we're proposing, and this was a discussion at the last hearing, to change this to a maximum ratio of 1-to-1 of the commercial area to the residential area if it's shown on a general plan of development that was approved between June 1st of 2020 and April 30th of 2022. Very specific to that. I should point out that the 2-to-1 ratio going to 1-to-1 is actually more restrictive because it's 2 square feet, what's there now is 2 square feet of residential is allowed for every 1 square feet of commercial. What we're proposing is if we use this mechanism of that development that occurred in that year and a half, you can only get 1 square foot of residential for every 1 square foot of commercial, even using that. So it's more restrictive. So we're not loosening the bounds. It's only for those approvals that occurred in that time period. And anything else that occurs in the Gateway Development Zone would have to adhere to the 2-to-1 ratio. So that only applies there. Also, we added another portion that the proposed residential component would provide for a minimum of 10% of the housing units as affordable for individuals or families at the 80% median income level, where there is a deed restriction for such component for 40 years. We specifically put it in. There was discussion about making an amendment the last time. We have specifically put it in this time. And the final is that the general plan of development is limited to real property located on the westerly side of Buckland Road. So this doesn't apply to the Gateway Zone everywhere, only to the portions west of Buckland Road. So the rationale for these changes, Evergreen Walk, LLC, has developed nearly 785,000 square feet of commercial use since its inception. Of that, 483,000 square feet has been approved since the approval of Tempo. Of that 483,000, more than 237,000 has been constructed since the approval of Tempo. So not only are we seeking getting approvals, but actually getting construction done. As I mentioned before, what we found is that financing and the market do not support the mix of residential and commercial generally on the same lot or parcel. There's resistance to that. So this proposal would allow the offset to include would allow a 2-to-1 offset for any general plan of development that included all new commercial approvals. Okay, that's where the 2-to-1 would apply. This proposal would allow that 1-to-1 to occur only on those general plans that were approved during that time period between June 1st of 2020 and April 30th of 2022. And when you do that calculation, I can tell you commercial constructed since Tempo's approval, as I mentioned before, the number is 483,000. That 240,000 includes, that all includes Costco, Harbor, Evergreen Crossing, the daycare facility, the hotel, and that's 245,000 that's been approved of non-senior housing development. So one of the questions that came up, and we debated putting this in the amendment, was there's slightly more commercial that's been developed than is required for a potential, might be required for a potential residential development. And I think it would be entirely appropriate for this commission, because the numbers are so close, to require as an approval condition that if you were to approve a residential development, that absorbed all of the commercial development in that time period for that one application. And that could be the amount that probably would be left over is fairly small. So we feel that this proposal, as we've amended it, is in conformance with the plan of conservation and development. The implementation of the plan in January of 18 talks about residential development and suggests that that the town allow flexibility in meeting emergent housing preferences and needs, that it continue to allow alternatives to single-family houses, including, among other things, multifamily and mixed use in appropriate areas, that the town stay apprised of and receptive to new ideas and trends in residential development and where there is a need in town, and encourage energy-efficient measures in that housing. It also suggests that the commission, the town, monitor housing affordability and identify providers of affordable housing in the region and discuss South Windsor's housing needs with them, and support housing opportunities that help achieve economic and transportation goals by supporting housing opportunities within walking distance to commercial areas and ensuring that new housing opportunities are appropriately sized and scaled, have minimal impacts to traffic, and provide pedestrian and bicycle connections to commercial areas. We feel that the amendment as revised and submitted does all of that and addresses the issues that had been brought up at the last hearing in addressing these within the context of the amendment itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the record, Chris Smith, Mr. Chairman, our two engineers will quickly just get up and hit the fact that the utilities, the infrastructure is there to support this text amendment in the GD zone. And they'll be very quick, I promise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I promise I'll be very quick. Good evening. My name is Ronald Boningen, professional engineer with Fuss & O'Neill, and focused on the text amendment for the area west of Buckland Road and the GD zone. We basically take a look, as an engineer, we'll take a look at the existing infrastructure, the utilities that would support the change of that text. I'm happy to say Evergreen Walk has all of these site utilities. The new water main has been installed from south all the way to north, and that is really the safety requirement that we're looking at, the health and safety of the community. Would this change in text have any negative effects on the surrounding community based on that amendment? And no. The water main is put in, there's adequate flow, there's adequate utility service within Evergreen Walk, west of Buckland Road in the general, in the area that we're speaking of to support this text change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Mitchell. I'm with Mitchell Traffic Engineering. Our office is in Enfield, Connecticut. And just again, in focusing on health and safety, which is an issue that you want to look at for the text amendment, we just wanted to give you a sort of a broad brush idea of the traffic impacts of this change if you do implement it. Looking at the west side of Buckland Street, which is what the text amendment applies to, everything that is built there that Alan was just talking about a few minutes ago generates about 35,000 vehicle trips a day. So that's inbound and outbound. That's all of the traffic going in and out of all of those various developments. Comparatively, if it's approved, the additional 165 residential units would generate about 900 more trips. So, I mean, I do this for a living. I'd be hard-pressed to see that change. You wouldn't ever notice it. So our opinion is that the text amendment does not, from a traffic standpoint, have any impact on the safety and welfare of the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Mike Goldman. I'm a principal at Goldman & York. We are a consulting firm based out of East Hartford. The work that we do is really focused on economic development, planning and development advisory work. Tonight is a little bit of a change of pace for me. Usually we're representing the municipality, so our client base Today, we have about 40 municipalities that we do that kind of work for, economic development, planning assistance, and real estate development advisory work. We also do a lot of work for state and quasi-state agencies. We're currently working for the Council of Governments, Capital Region Council of Governments, and other groups like Riverfront Recapture, private colleges and universities, and then finally, we do some work for private developers, and that's what brings me here tonight. Attorney Smith made some comments about what's going on in the industry generally and sort of issues that we're dealing with and the activities that are coming out of some of those issues. I should point out that we are a very data-driven firm. We look at the data and we let the market and the market activity tell us what's going on and form the basis for our recommendations to our clients. So I'm just going to do a very brief overview just to set the stage, in sort of an industry overview and provide some context for you. So quickly, you know, the whole COVID thing has really impacted our work, but really the way you have to look at it is that mostly what it did was accelerate existing trends. And this first slide is a very brief overview of the major sectors. At the top, the office sector, of course, has been impacted dramatically by remote working. The result is that the current demand for office spaces in this market particularly is virtually zero, and the vacancy rates are going up significantly. We think that the market will go from roughly 20% vacant in the office sector to in excess of 30 to 35% vacant. Retail, I mean, you can just look around. Your neighbor here at the shops at Buckland Hills went into bankruptcy over a year ago. The town of Manchester is actually one of our clients, one of our municipal clients. We are working with them to work with the new owners of shops at Buckland Hills and try to help come up with a program to help that project. But in retail, it's been dramatically impacted by the move to online, and the result is lower demand and increasing vacancy in that sector as well. Hotels obviously really took it hard. They are recovering now. We're starting to see revenue per average room, daily occupancy rates, and so on start to come back up. There won't be any, of course, new development for quite a while. A number of the hotels in this area are being converted to other uses, mostly residential, which is where the demand is, and I'll come to that in a minute. But this market has lost about 1,500 hotel rooms in the last 2 years as a result of the decline in the industry. And I don't think those will come back. Historically, hotels were running around 60% occupied, so that's too low to make most of them make financial sense. So losing 1,200 or so hotel rooms is actually a good thing for the industry. The hot areas are the next three. The warehouse logistics, I mean, you don't have to look very far to see what's going on in that industry. We have a slide that I would be happy to send you at some point that shows all the activity in north central Connecticut in that sector. Huge amount of activity, and no foreseeable decline or slowdown in the pace of growth there. Self-storage, lots of demand for it. We seem to have an unlimited supply.
Self-storage is not part of this language?
No, this is simply an industry overview.
Right, and your industry overview could really go with the general plan.
Okay. I can move on.
Okay.
I'm almost done here, but whatever you'd like me to do.
If you could move on,
Sure.
I'm not interested in hearing about
So the next
storage.
the next 2 points are about apartments and the demand for apartments. And then lastly, the demand in the horizontal mixed use, what we call horizontal mixed use. That's really what we're talking about here tonight. Residential rental, residential adjacent to retail. It's really become the most common and sort of the ideal approach, if you will, for situations like we're talking about tonight. So just a quick look at the state economy. You know, we're really a slow to no growth state since the 1990s. Job growth has been stagnant for 30-odd years. Population growth is the same, sort of 1% increases. If you take out the increases in Fairfield County and New London County, north central Connecticut is actually in a state of decline from a population standpoint. We're not keeping up from a fertility standpoint. South Windsor's median age is a little above Connecticut, but, you know, you share that with a lot of other
Excuse me, again,
communities.
fertility doesn't have to do with the text amendment.
Okay, I've moved on.
You're welcome to present that stuff during your general plan or the special exception, but I'm having a hard time connecting it to the text amendment.
Okay, I can move on to the net fiscal impact if you'd like me to, and just talk about that, or do you want to do that later too?
The actual net fiscal impact should be part of the general plan.
Okay. Sure. The Attorney Smith is just making the comment that I guess the focus here is on the mixed-use component, which is the mix of residential and retail, and how they work together. The reason that has become such a popular form of development is that you're basically putting disposable income next to retail in the current environment, retail and food and beverage. And in the current environment, I mean, that works very, very well. The situations that we've been part of, and we've been part of many of them around the state, where similar development patterns have emerged with residential next to retail, we'll call it mixed use, has really proven out to be tremendously supportive to the retail component and the food and beverage component. So I think that's kind of the core of it. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Trying to adjust on the fly here, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for your patience with us. We appreciate that. You did make reference, Mr. Chairman, with the letters. I have not reviewed all the letters, but it's my understanding they were generated to be generic for both the text amendment and for the general plan amendment and the special exception. So I would just respectfully request that they just be added whatever weight you want to give them for both of the public hearings. In conclusion, I respectfully submit that the proposed text amendment is consistent with your comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan for the town of South Windsor, your regulations, your zone map. It deals with the GD zone, as we know, a specific location where the GD zone already exists. It's providing for an expansion of the residential component in the GD zone district. That's the text amendment. And I would respectfully submit that it is consistent, promoting for more housing opportunities and more housing choices with Section 8-2, with your plan of conservation and development to promote mixed-use developments when you can. And to that end, I know, and it's just pretty unusual, all the overlay zones that you have. And I'm being complimentary. Your center core overlay zone, your center north overlay zone, and your Sullivan Avenue mixed-use development overlay zone are all consistent with what's before you this evening, and you like to see a mixed-use development proposal. That's your overlay zones provide for that, and they provide for an affordable component. And I respectfully submit that what's before you this evening with this text amendment is very comparable and very similar to those three overlay zones that you already have in town to promote the exact mixed use that you had the foresight a number of years ago to allow to open up the door with the 200 units coming into Evergreen Walk. And, you know, I remember your prior director, Marcia Bannock, she kept telling me about the lifestyle community up here, Evergreen Walk, and I remember coming up and grabbing dinner, and I said, well, where's the residential use? The component, where are the apartments? And she said, we don't have any, we don't want that here. And I said, well, where's the support? It's that mixed-use component is just something that, I've been active with that group for years on the board with Marcia, served on it for the Connecticut APA, and eventually you had the foresight and staff to support that. And I think it's been a benefit. I respectfully submit it's been a benefit to Evergreen Walk. You have a lot of vacancies there today. We all know what that is the result of. That's not going to change overnight, but having an additional housing choice and an additional housing opportunity where you are providing for an expanded, with a limitation, it's going to have a cap, additional residential component to support the shops and your commercial uses at Evergreen Walk, as the 200 units have already done over the years, is again consistent with what you have set for this community and for this commission through your regulations, to adopt regulations that promote and address those goals and objectives. And I respectfully submit in closing that this text amendment does do just that for you. And I would respectfully request that this time around, hopefully with this additional information, that the commission act favorably upon the text amendment. And thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff. Jeff Folger, again, sitting in for Michelle Light, Director of Planning.
Thank you. So I'll read, again, a synopsis report from the Planning Department on the proposed text amendment. This is for application 22-07P, the request by Evergreen Walk LLC for a text amendment to change specific requirements for multifamily residential use in the Buckland Gateway Development Zone, including section 4.2.15A-.2.E to increase the number of units permitted to 365 units, and modify the same section to modify the criteria for achieving the required 2-to-1 residential to commercial ratio for mixed-use developments within this zone. This is a resubmission from the amendment previously denied by this commission in January of 2022 and is the subject of pending litigation. Currently, regulations permit multifamily residential use. However, the unit number is limited to 200 units in conjunction with new commercial development at a ratio of 2-to-1 square footage. The current apartments are approved under these regulations. The proposed changes would allow for an additional 165 multifamily units, including a 1-to-1 ratio of residential to commercial square footage when the commercial area is shown on the general plan approved on or after June 1st, 2020, and prior to April 30th, 2022. The proposed residential component provides a minimum of 10% of the housing as affordable for individuals or families at the 80% medium income level, where there is a deed restriction for such component for a 40-year time frame, and the property to be considered must be on the westerly side of Buckland Road. The text proposal changes how the mixed-use ratio of residential to commercial would be calculated, proposing the commercial square footage requirement considered current proposed commercial construction activity within the Evergreen Walk site, not necessarily new construction in the area of the proposed housing. Applications for this use require a special exception application along with an update to the general plan. A consideration when evaluating a text amendment is a review of the goals of the POCD and recently adopted affordable housing plan. In the residential section of the current town plan of conservation and development, the potential for mixed-use development is referenced. One of the stated goals is support housing opportunities that help achieve economic and transportation goals. The plan states the residential densities plan identifies possible housing opportunity areas. These areas are identified as good housing candidates because they are within walking distance to commercial areas, have bus service, and are located along an arterial road. New housing in the opportunity areas should be supportive of and coexist with commercial development so that housing does not reduce the economic viability of these areas. A mixed-use approach is encouraged. Planned and laid out to avoid traffic issues, housing development should minimize curb cuts, provide pedestrian and bicycle connections to nearby commercial uses, and take other measures to reduce congestion issues. Also, the recently adopted affordable housing plan is one of its strategies to increase deed-restricted units. The applicant has provided municipal, fiscal, and economic impact analysis outlining the economics of the project. The Capital Region Council of Governments has reviewed this amendment as required and has forwarded the following report, the CROG report, dated March 4th, 2022. If this amendment is approved, the Commission must find that the text is in conformance with the town plan and must set an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments on this application.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll turn to members of the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Okay, at this time, we'll read some letters into the record. Stephanie, would you like to start? Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, and as Attorney Smith said, we do have letters to read into the record. It is very tough to distinguish whether they're for the general plan or for the text amendment. I have no problem reading them once here and accepting them into the record for the general plan. Turn to.
So this is a letter from Elaine Abouakar. Dear Mr. Pasiconis, as a South Windsor resident and full-time realtor helping buyers and sellers throughout our community, I am writing to express my support for the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. Throughout the greater Hartford area, I see communities responding to the demand for needed new multifamily communities that are sought by young professionals and empty nesters. If South Windsor turns its back on these applications, we will see these proposed developments and customer base and needed tax revenue they bring go to other neighboring communities. Our retailers and small businesses, particularly those at Evergreen Walk, need the new customers and economic activity that 165 new homes at Evergreen Walk will bring to our community. Please help ensure that South Windsor remains financially strong and welcoming community by approving the residences at Evergreen Walk. This letter is from Andrew Paterna in South Windsor. As a member of the South Windsor Town Council, I am writing to share my support for the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. I firmly believe this project will greatly contribute to the revitalization of the Evergreen Walk area that we are concerned about at this time. A strong Evergreen Walk is essential for the future stability of South Windsor. The addition of 165 new residences will provide needed new customers for the shops, restaurants, and services at Evergreen Walk, help retain existing tenants, and attract new businesses. South Windsor needs exactly this type of economic development that will attract young professionals to reside in town. The additional tax revenue will help to offset potential tax increases and maintain South Windsor's services. In addition, 10% of the residences at Evergreen Walk will be affordable, helping us meet our objectives of the recently proposed South Windsor 2022 to 2027 Affordable Housing Plan. As you know, this plan was also approved and endorsed by the Town Council at a recent meeting. The project will provide a positive development in South Windsor, and I am in full support of this residential addition to the Evergreen Walk area. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Andrew Paterna. Dear Mr. Pasiconis, this is Scott Kelly. As a South Windsor resident and business owner, I am writing to voice my support for the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. Proposed residences at Evergreen Walk will strengthen and continue the revitalization of Evergreen Walk. South Windsor relies on the revenue generated by Evergreen Walk to support town schools, public safety, recreation, and general government operations. A strong Evergreen Walk is essential for South Windsor's financial stability. The addition of 165 new residences will provide needed new customers for the shops, restaurants, and services at the Evergreen Walk, help retain existing tenants, and attract new businesses. Proposed residences at Evergreen Walk will add needed revenue for South Windsor. South Windsor will soon be borrowing $75 million to support school construction and municipal improvements with an estimated annual debt service of $1.5 million. South Windsor needs economic development and additional tax revenue to offset potential tax increases and maintain South Windsor's services. Proposed residences at Evergreen Walk will help South Windsor achieve its affordable housing objectives. Only 6.8% of South Windsor's housing stock is affordable housing, well below the state of Connecticut's objective of 10%. 10% of the residences at Evergreen Walk will be affordable, helping meet the objectives of South Windsor 2022 to 2027 Affordable Housing Plan. Multifamily housing is the highest and best use for the site. Retail is not a desired use at this site due to the lack of visibility and inferior location. Commercial is currently approved for the site but would add more traffic than the residential use that is proposed. Office and manufacturing are not in demand and produce more traffic at peak hours than multifamily housing. Single-family homes produce the greatest number of students per unit, while multifamily produces the least. The estates at South Windsor single-family subdivision on Graham Road added 1.14 students per resident, while Tempo multifamily apartments at Evergreen Walk added only 0.21, or approximately only 1 student for every 5 residences. I hope your commission considers the above information and votes in favor of this proposal. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Scott Kelly. Dear Mr. Pasaconis, I am Renu Cabot, a South Windsor resident of 12 years, and I am ready to voice my support for the proposed residence at Evergreen Walk. Being on the working group for affordable housing, as you know, we have discussed the pressing need for affordable housing for our current and future residents of South Windsor. There are various benefits to this, including economic and demographic diversity that our community is in need of. When we moved into town 12 years ago, we were lucky to find the home we live in for rental that was affordable to us as a young, struggling family. But this would not have been possible if we did not personally know our landlady. In the years of being renters, we had times where discussions to sell were brought up by the landlady, and we couldn't afford purchasing or renting other homes in this beautiful town. We had to consider moving out of town for affordability reasons. This was our personal experience. We are, of course, in a better situation now and are grateful that we did not have to leave. Here are the specifics of why I support this proposal. This is a heading. Proposed residences at Evergreen Walk will strengthen and continue the revitalization of Evergreen Walk. South Windsor relies on the revenue generated by Evergreen Walk to support the town schools, public safety, recreation, and general government operations. A strong Evergreen Walk is essential for South Windsor's financial stability. The addition of 165 new residences will provide needed new customers for the shops, restaurants, and services at Evergreen Walk, help retain existing tenants, and attract new businesses. Next heading is proposed residents at Evergreen Walk will add needed revenue for South Windsor. South Windsor will soon be borrowing $75 million to support school construction and municipal improvements with an estimated annual debt service of $1.5 million. South Windsor needs economic development and additional tax revenue to offset potential tax increases and maintain South Windsor's services. Next heading is proposed residents at Evergreen Walk will help South Windsor achieve its affordable housing objectives. Only 6.8% of South Windsor's housing stock is affordable housing, well below the state of Connecticut's objective of 10%. 10% of the residences at Evergreen Walk will be affordable, helping meet the objectives of the South Windsor 2022-2027 Affordable Housing Plan. Next heading, multifamily housing is the highest and best use for the site. Retail is not a desired use of this site due to the lack of visibility and inferior location. Commercial is currently approved for the site but would add more traffic than the residential use proposed. Office and manufacturing are not in demand and produce more traffic at peak hours than multifamily housing. Single-family homes produce the greatest number of students per unit, while multifamily produces the least. States at South Windsor, a single-family subdivision on Graham Road, added 1.14 students per residence, while Tempo, multifamily apartments at Evergreen Walk, added only 0.21, or approximately 1 student for every 5 residences. We want South Windsor and its wonderful benefits to be shared and experienced by everyone who wishes to live here, and having these affordable housing options is key. So I therefore want to offer my support for this proposal. Sincerely, Renew Cabot. I'm thinking I'll read one more and then let you read them. Dear Mr. Pasiconis, as a 55-year resident of South Windsor and a retired educator from our South Windsor Public Schools, I am writing to urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the residences at Evergreen Walk. The applicant and developer produced quality work with successful addition of Tempo in South Windsor and have proven themselves throughout Connecticut for over 50 years. While the commercial use is a permitted use for this site, clearly it would add more traffic than the current multifamily application. Further, there is no demand for office use, and the site is too far removed to be viable for retail. There's also a myth that multifamily housing communities like Tempo and the proposed new 165 units produce more school-age children than single-family homes. It should be noted that while the estates at South Windsor, a single-family subdivision on Graham Road, added 1.14 students per residence to South Windsor schools, Tempo added only 0.21, or approximately only 1 student for every 5 residences. Finally, this proposal only makes dollars and cents. South Windsor needs the tax revenue if we are to remain fiscally strong. One-time permit fees would exceed $500,000 in tax revenue, while annual taxes and fees would exceed $750,000. Evergreen Walk clearly needs the new customers who will be living within a short walking distance of their stores, restaurants, and businesses, and these new customers attract more businesses to Evergreen. Communities need economic development to grow. South Windsor is no exception. Communities require strong, stable, and increased tax revenue to stabilize their tax base. South Windsor is no exception. Our neighboring communities, East Hartford, Bloomfield, West Hartford, Windsor, and Newington, are attracting multifamily developers. They are our competition. Let's not be left out and lose our chance. I strongly encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the residences at Evergreen Walk. Thank you, Daria and Plummer.
Dear Chairman Pasiconis, I want to thank you and the other commissioners for volunteering your time on planning and zoning. This letter is to lend my support for the residents at Evergreen Walk project that includes 165 new residential units. This type of development is crucial to support the businesses at Evergreen Walk, especially the new Whole Foods. Highland Park Market failed in part due to a lack of residential component at that time. To ensure Whole Foods' success, additional residential units can only be a benefit to Whole Foods and the other businesses' success in the Evergreen Walk area. The success of the entire Evergreen Walk area is a high priority for our town. I believe that it is essential that we do whatever we can to support Evergreen Walk. The addition of 165 new residential units within walking distance to the shops will provide new customers and new revenue to one of our town's most important tax and employment asset. Furthermore, this new development will be a net add to our tax base, which will help offset the cost to finance the newly built schools in our community. In the best interest of our town, I recommend you approve the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk project. Sincerely, Bill Jodis, 32 Green Lane, South Windsor. Dear Mr. Pasiconis, I own a salon in the Evergreen Walk area, and I feel compelled to voice my support for the proposed residences. 165 new units means new customers for me and all my fellow business owners nearby. But on top of that, I know that South Windsor will soon be borrowing $75 million to support school construction and municipal improvements with an estimated annual debt service of $1.5 million. This project seems like the right option for South Windsor in terms of economic development and additional tax revenue to offset potential tax increases and maintain South Windsor's services. I look forward to new neighbors in the area. Sincerely, Carrie Moore.
All right. Dear Mr. Pasaconis, we support the building of the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. The project sounds like a beautiful addition to the area. We are impressed that 19.36 acres of the lot will remain open space and that the project includes such robust amenities as the outdoor heated pool, fire pit, hammock park, and putting green. These features will add to the value of the area, and we are sure residents will count their prime access to the shops at Evergreen Walk as perks as well. Sincerely, Anthony Vidal. Dear Mr. Pasaconis, I am writing to voice my support for the proposed Evergreen Walk residences. I'm intrigued by the robust amenities included in the residences and feel that the multifamily housing is the highest and best use for this site. As a business owner, it's always helpful to have more customers to draw from. 165 new units would bring new families and their networks into our stores. Sincerely, Aquatic Wildlife Company, 70 Buckland Road. Dear Mr. Pasaconis, I am in support of the proposed Evergreen Walk residences. As the owner of the Clothes Mentor in the Evergreen Run Shopping Center, I know the benefit that new local neighbors would bring to the shopping center. The addition of 165 new residences in the area will provide new customers and retain those who already live and shop nearby, contributing to the neighborhood feel of that area. Clothes Mentor is a women's resale store that makes luxury brands affordable with up to 70% of the retail price because we believe everyone deserves a chance to look their best. The inclusion of affordable housing in the project supports our values for the building of a beautiful neighborhood accessible to people at varying price points. It also gives us access to a great more diverse population to sell merchandise to us as we buy direct from the public. Sincerely, Wendy Upton, 90 E. Buckland Road. Dear Mr. Pasaconis, as a 2-decade resident of South Windsor, I am writing to voice my support for the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. The residences at Evergreen Walk will be an excellent use of that land and an excellent fit for the town. This project fits smart growth development, benefits all generations, empty nesters, boomerang generation, and young professionals, and provides diversity opportunities. It is environmentally friendly and a must-sought community design for progressive-minded that desire to work, walk to play, and walk to the shop. Commissioners, remember that the Connecticut has the 8th oldest population in the nation. Planned communities support our aging seniors while simultaneously attracting a generation of young adults and professionals searching for a place to call home and inspired by a town center-like design. Both groups are looking to drive less and have an appetite for environmentally sustainable transportation that improves health, supports their neighborhoods, and connects them to opportunities. Undoubtedly, this development focus benefits the environment and increases the tax base for South Windsor, all of which I strongly support and advocate for. As we are aware, time is money. I am urging all of you, without further delay, to approve the residences at Evergreen Walk as a win-win for all. Respectfully yours, Yanel Tehran, 1010 Sandstone Drive.
Dear Chairman, Paconis, and Commissioners, we write in support of the proposed addition of 165 housing units to the residents at Evergreen Walk. Expansion of housing at the site will have several benefits that outweigh any potential limitations, including a significant increase to our tax revenues in South Windsor's affordable housing stock, and a substantial improvement to the overall commercial viability of the Evergreen Walk project. We appreciate the Council's stewardship of our town's quality of life, specifically a valid concern about the impacts of overdevelopment. We do believe that prudent and managed growth is critically important to any town's vibrancy and economic and community health. The potential addition of new families and children to South Windsor is a good problem to have. The benefits of welcoming these people into our town and schools far outweighs any school infrastructure work we may have to do to accommodate them. We strongly encourage you to support this project. Thank you for the time and effort the Commission puts in on our community's behalf. Rick and Lisa Love, 863 Main Street. Mr. Bart Paconis, Chairman. Dear Bart, RE the residents at Evergreen Walk. As a town resident, urban planner, local businessman, and taxpayer, I am supportive of the residents at Evergreen Walk development for a number of reasons. First is that I want to continue to see Evergreen Walk's revitalization. With the addition of 165 new households, we will continue to see empty store spaces filling up and existing tenants renew their leases, reversing a trend over the last 5 years. A thriving Evergreen Walk is important for the economic prosperity of South Windsor. After all, the entire 350-acre development with an assessed value of $105 million is our second largest taxpayer after Eversource. Second is that we need the additional tax revenue, $850,000 annually, and building permit and other fees, $460,000 from this $30 million development to offset large local government expenditures, especially to pay for our 4 beautiful new elementary schools and a large plurality of us supported at referenda. Otherwise, our municipal taxes will be higher than they need to be. Third is that the town needs to build some affordable housing. I understand the developer will be designating 10% of these attractive new homes as affordable. South Windsor's affordable housing stock is a pathetic 6.8%. We can do better. And fourth is that this new residential community will only generate 1 school child for every 5 homes, compared to Toll Brothers' new single-family subdivision on Graham Road, which has added over 1 school child for every home. This new development will not be a burden on our schools. Indeed, it will help pay for them. All the best, Peter R. DeMalley. Dear Mr. Pecorones, I wanted to communicate my support for the proposed residents at Evergreen Walk. I own a business in the area and would like to see more residents in the neighborhood. I have learned that Evergreen Walk is South Windsor's largest taxpayer after Eversource, and that the town relies on the revenue generated by Evergreen Walk to support the town's schools, public safety, recreation, and general government operations. Knowing this, it's clear our success at Evergreen Walk business owners is essential for South Windsor's financial stability. New residencies in the area will increase the customer base for my own business and for the businesses of my colleagues at Evergreen Walk. Celia Brian Gare, Teen Image LLC, 70 East Buckland Road, Evergreen Run.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Viteri?
I believe this is the one that was included with our pack.
Okay.
Dear Mr. Pasakonis, I am writing to offer my support for the proposed residences at Evergreen Walk. As a franchisee owner of the European Wax Center located in the Evergreen Run Shopping Center, we are always excited for new South Windsor residents. Our business, like many others in the shopping center, thrives from loyal local customers. The addition of multifamily housing so nearby is a strong predictor of repeated guests, clients who are conveniently located and able to make businesses like mine part of their routines. I would gladly welcome new residents to the area and find the proposed project to be the correct fit for the site. Sincerely, Evan Gutman, Carter 3, doing business as the European Wax Center at 70 Buckland Road.
Thank you. Are there any other letters that we've received that we haven't read into the record? Okay. Then at this time, I'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
For questions?
Yeah. Regarding the text amendment. And if you could, just tilt your microphone down a little.
Okay.
Just the end of it, the very end of it, yeah. Awesome.
Couple things. One, from a legal standpoint, I understand that this verbiage was intended to make sure that this doesn't apply to anything other than this area.
Yeah, maybe address it to the
Okay.
applicant.
I understand that the way this is written, it was intended so that it would not apply to any area other than the Evergreen Walk area.
That is correct. That's where that portion of the GD zone, yes.
So my question, and I'm not sure you're the right person to answer it, but, you know, and I'm new to this, so, in other applications, people have referenced things we've done before and said, well, you did it there, shouldn't you do it here? And I guess one of my concerns is, you know, in the past, when we have made changes like this, where we're saying it's for a specific area, you know, have we had to amend something else because of a precedent that we set on this area?
Should I, for the record,
Please.
and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for reading the letters. I do realize that there's overlap there, but thank you. And for the next public hearing, I would respectfully suggest that doesn't have to be done, but you do things the way that you do them. but I would just indicate that we would certainly not ask that to happen if that's not something you choose to do, which I think the chair had indicated. Commissioner Carey, the precedent, for example, that happened here, again, was that initially the gateway zone did not permit any residential use at all. And this commission a number of years ago did allow for an amendment similar to this one that did permit it subject to special exception review and approval. And there was a cap of 200 units put on it for this zone. Similar to some of the overlay zones that you have where you have similar caps, you have mixed uses allowed again in the center core overlay, the center north overlay zone, and the Sullivan Avenue mixed use development overlay zone, where you have a similar formula for permitted uses where you again, you have something that the commission has always liked to promote is that mixed use component, residential and having multifamily available with an affordable component. So you have done this before, not only in the GD zone by allowing for the 200 units, and obviously part of the request is to raise that cap, but you have done it with your other overlay zones where you've had similar components to promote this type of use, a mixed use, residential with commercial for certain areas in your town.
Okay. And I have one last question. Why are garages not considered part of the residential footprint?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
She's asking why aren't garage square footage is considered part of either commercial or residential square footage in the 2-to-1 or the 1-to-1 ratios.
That's a very technical question for our planner, Mr. Lamson, I believe. I'm just a country land use lawyer.
So thank you very much, Attorney Smith. This is actually was in the original language. This is not something we're adding. Okay. It was felt at the time that those facilities such as the clubhouse or a meeting room or a garage, which aren't really residential in nature, shouldn't be counted as part of the residential, but also shouldn't be counted as part of the commercial to offset the residential. So back when this was originally adopted years ago, those things that are listed here it was decided by the commission that we just wouldn't count them one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
You all set? Okay. Commissioner Cavagnero?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. However, I will just say as a comment, I don't see anything wrong with this text amendment. I know last time a similar amendment, we turned it down 4-3. Just putting on the record, going through everything, it applies to the Buckland Gateway Development Zone. Again, everything was provided on the traffic impacts, the impacts of it just in general. I don't see anything wrong with it. The majority of my comments are for 2208, so I'll save that for then to just speed this up.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dexter?
Just to give appreciation to formalizing the affordable housing units within the text amendment. Appreciate that.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. So before I go into the details of the text amendment, and I think you're going to find me generally positive, I'd like to address a paragraph in a letter that Attorney Smith sent us that asks us not to allow Commissioner Dexter to participate in the processing of these applications. I actually find that whole proposal offensive. I think Commissioner Dexter is a very capable and fair commissioner. We don't always vote the same. Sometimes we vote differently than everybody else. Sometimes we're, individually different than the rest of the commission. But I just think it's horrible that you'd be proposing that she not participate, and I hope you will withdraw that request.
Commissioner Wagner, as I indicated as diplomatically as I could, and I had indicated this to your professional staff, Michelle, your director, that I just had to create a record, and understanding that Commissioner Dexter would probably take the position that she took tonight, and we've moved on. So I have an obligation on behalf of my client. There was certainly no offense intended. I've sat on boards and commissions for well over 20 years myself, so it was just something that was done to create the record, and hopefully, I see Commissioner Dexter nodding her head, I don't think she took offense to it, and no offense was meant. It was, again, I have a client and just creating a record, but hopefully we can focus on the merits of the application at this point. But point well taken, and again, no offense was, personal offense by any means was meant to Commissioner Dexter.
Thank you. So let's move on. This is about adding 165 family units to an area that only allowed 200. It's about adding the 10% or codifying the 10% affordable housing, and it's about only allowing those 165 units on the westerly side of Buckland Road. The part of the text amendment that deals with ratios and so on, I think is interesting, but not really what we're about here. So the question is it a good idea to add 165 multifamily units, especially if 10% of them are affordable, and is it a good idea to keep them on the west side of Buckland Road? I read the Gorman and York report. I found it compelling. It's not a report that goes down well with one reading. It's very, very detailed and very precise. And I think one of the points that were made in that report is that the residential component is really essential to the shield Evergreen Walk from what's called the retail apocalypse. Whether the ratio should be 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 7-to-1, we need the residents added to Evergreen Walk to increase its viability. Tired of seeing 40% vacancy there. The 30 students that would come from adding some facility somewhere with 165 apartments, I think is actually conservatively large. The 200 units at Tempo added between 27 and 36, and that was 200, not 165 units. The incremental costs, and this is the first time I think I've seen it, where it didn't just talk about the fact that schools are, spending 15,811 per student per year. This got down to the incremental cost, which is actually only 9,249. So basically saying, if we add 30 students, what is each of them going to add to the cost? And a lot of the costs are fixed. They have nothing to do with how many students you have. So this makes a correction for that, which I found very interesting. I think that the school costs and all the other costs associated with, increasing our population are easily absorbed by the revenues, and they made a very good case that adding 165 units somewhere in Evergreen Walk would generate a large amount of taxes. Police, town hall, et cetera, easily absorbed. There was one correction I would make, that the sewer cost is $415 per unit. That's not correct. It's more like $210 for apartments. That's a minor detail. And this far exceeds any incremental impact on the sewer plant as well. I happen to be the chair of the Water Pollution Control Authority, so I speak with some knowledge in that area. Not included, but is the avoided loss of retail taxes if we don't do this. So there's a cost to us of losing retail, and this has to be considered when we consider adding more residential units. So I think this is essential to the success of the South Windsor retail, especially Evergreen Walk. And that's all I have for this part of the hearing, for this hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner LeBlanc?
Thank you. I don't have anything extra to add. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Viteri.
Just first a comment, and I appreciate as an attorney, I appreciate what it's been like trying to split hairs between what goes with each part of the application and everything. So on my part, I'm not going to make comments that'll be relevant to the next part now. So I think that as far as the text amendment goes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, regarding the language, my issue isn't with the cap. It's more with the change in the way that the commercial is used. In the past, we've always done it for a plan for a specific area. This new proposal, which is similar to the old proposal, if you want to call it, cherry picks other commercial square footage that really has nothing to do with the apartments. I understand you're trying to get apartments approved. I understand that. I just don't like the precedent it sets for changing the regulations for a specific application and then leaving that language out there for, like Commissioner Carey said, somebody else coming along and wanting the same thing and you gave it to them, why can't you give it to us also? That's my whole issue with it. I understand the economic viability, but that's not necessarily the issue that's before us right now. It's how this language reads and writes for future applicants. And I don't have the solution right now, but I understand the efforts that you've tried to put in to make it palatable. I just don't know if I can support it as it's written. So, Commissioners, is there anything else regarding this text amendment language? Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah. Actually, I held off saying something that, after your comment, maybe I should have said. I do agree with you that this seems very, it's almost spot zoning, okay? An alternative could be to limit new housing to being 1,500 feet from Buckland Road or some distance. I think this is actually more like 1,800 feet from Buckland Road, but someone could take out a ruler and confirm that. But if we limited new housing, and then the ratio, 2 to 1, increase the ratio enough that, because I think the residents of this town want this development. I don't know how all the other commissioners feel. I certainly like to see this development. To me, maybe just changing the whole method by which we allow 165 new units to be added and be much simpler, just to say we don't want it too close to Buckland Road, and that also kind of limits where in the whole area you could actually put another apartment development. Because I think on the other side of Buckland Road, if you put that distance big enough, you won't be able to fit apartments anywhere. That's my suggestion. I don't know how you feel.
Were you addressing that to?
Yeah, I would wonder if how they would feel about that, maybe.
Commissioner Wagner, I think that's something, for the record, Chris Smith, that's something, if the hearing were to be left open to your next meeting, we can certainly look into that type of modification. And I do have a couple of comments to the chair's comments, but I think you're still.
All right, well, that's all I have for now, yeah.
Okay. Before you do your comments, I just want to say that suggestion would be more palatable to me. The only thing is, I just don't want to see it come in exclusionary, that there's no place else in the zone that could meet those qualifications. Because at that point, then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it more or less becomes impossible zoning, doesn't it?
Impossible, or I'm sorry?
If you have rules where nobody, after this application, nobody else could possibly apply for, then doesn't, in the eyes of the state, make that null and void?
I don't believe so, but you do raise a good point, Mr. Chairman, and I would just direct you, when you made the first change to the GD zone to allow for residential with a cap of 200, at that point, in theory, it was impossible, unless somebody comes back for a text amendment, like we're here this evening, to come back with anything else, because you would have to approve a text amendment. So, and it's not unusual with your overlay zones. If you plot that overlay zone on a particular site, once you've done whatever, you've maxed out under that overlay zone. But specifically with the gateway zone, when you allow the residential component to come in for the first time, which again, I think there was a lot of foresight with the commission, and you were on the commission when that happened, and there were concerns, but I respectfully submit, certainly has worked out. I don't think there's been any issues with it. But you would, it's not impossible in the sense that somebody could always come back and ask for a change, either to increase the cap and to come up with, in a different location. Let's say you want to see something, you would like to see something on the easterly side. A proposal comes in and you say, that's one of the best things we've ever seen, then you would do text amendments to accommodate that. There would be some modifications. Just as we're here this evening, we can't do that site development that's the subject of the next public hearing. We can't do that without these text amendments. So you're right. There's a, it's, if you want to call it impossible, we can't do that without that text relief. And similarly, anybody else who came back and wanted to do anything similar to this in the gateway zone would have to look for a text amendment. If somebody came in and did an overlay in your center north overlay zone, and then they wanted to do something different and expand on whatever you approved the first time, just like with Evergreen Walk, they would have to come back to you for a change. One of the unique things about Evergreen Walk is that it's just a large, it's not like an individual piece of property. It's not your home or my home. It's just this large section of your town on the westerly side of Buckland. It's that whole zone, and it's known as Evergreen Walk. But as we know, there are individual property owners in there. So, and one of the things, we're going to take a look exactly at what was suggested. So, if we can address that issue that way for you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Wagner and other commissioners, will come back and see what we can do to accommodate that concern. And I do have a comment. Commissioner Wagner made reference to the Goldman-York report, and Mike Goldman is substituting for Dr. Poland, who did draft that report. And one of the things that I told Dr. Poland, I love the first 8 pages maybe, and it talked about, and as Mr. Goldman indicated, a lot of their work is economic development for towns, trying to promote the use of land for economic development. And one of the things that I think Dr. Poland touched upon, and it was referenced by Commissioner Wagner at his first comments, was the need to be entrepreneurial for a planning and zoning commission. You know, having that hat on to try to work with landowners, with applicants, with all your other boards, just as you did with your affordable housing plan to promote affordable housing. But this would be economic development, and Commissioner Wagner did bring that up, and I just wanted to emphasize that. We look forward to hopefully continuing to work with this commission to do just that for Evergreen Walk, and to provide that additional shot in the arm, so to speak, with the additional residential use. But we will look into that specific issue that both you raised, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Wagner, for our next meeting. We'll see what we can do with that.
Okay, thank you. So, commissioners, do you have anything else that should be said tonight? Okay.
I think we need to keep the public hearing open if we're going to, we may need to post repost.
My intent is not to close it, it's to keep the public hearing open, to get additional information. And also, I have a couple questions I'd like to discuss with legal, so.
And then, I mean, the other thing is, if we're really gonna make that big a change in this text, don't we have to go back through?
You mean like
The
be
process.
re-advertised?
Yeah.
I think Michelle gets back on Monday. That'll be one of the things that I discuss with her. So, okay. So, Commissioners, what I'd like to do is continue the public hearing open to our next meeting. What date is that? The 24th? Okay. So, would somebody be willing to make a motion?
I move we continue the public hearing to May 24.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, let the record reflect it's unanimous. Thank you.
Very much, everyone.
Don't go too far.
Aye.
Okay. Our next public hearing is application 22-08P, Evergreen Walk LLC. Tell me about it. Should be right up there. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, again, members of the commission and professional staff. For the record, Chris Smith of Alter and Pearson on behalf of the owner applicant Evergreen Walk LLC. I would just respectfully request that the chair incorporate my procedural comments from the last public hearing in Commissioner Dexter's response into this one. And also, I did submit the confirmation that I sent the certified letters out. When I sent the certified notices out, the heading was the same as the cover letter with the applications, so both applications were referenced in it when it went out for the record. We did have the first public hearing. Thank you very much for, as we know, we were trying to split some hairs there and distinguish between the two proposals. This public hearing does indeed deal with a request to amend the general plan and a special exception for a multifamily residential use, specifically 165 units, multifamily units on what is known as Unit 7C at Evergreen Walk. I'm just providing you, as you're well aware, we did spend quite a bit of time on the zone text amendment and what the standards are. In your own regulations, provide for the criteria for a general plan amendment. The sections are there, you're very familiar with them, as well as there is special exception criteria for the specific multifamily residential use that's before you. And I do reference those, and I'm sure they'll be referenced by your planning director, Ms. Light, in her report and her comments when she returns. So with the permission of the chair, and we can just dive right into the site-specific proposal. We're going to start with Mr. Lamson, and then we'll go through the same folks that we had before. And Mr. Goman will get up and address his report, and then we will hear from Mr. Rappaport, who is the developer with regard to the specifics of the site development proposal. So again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, for the record, Alan Lamson, FLB Architecture and Planning in Manchester, representing the applicant. So, again, just for clarification, this is the general plan of development as we have presented it for this application. And again, discussing it, it runs from Deming Street to the north, almost to Smith Street to the south, Buckland Road to the east, and Plum Gully Brook to the west, generally. Again, we've been through multiple modifications to the general plan as the market has evolved, as time has evolved, as other things have happened that impact the site. And as I mentioned before, there are some things that we were asked to do by the commission over a period of time. Those have been done. The trail system is completed. I don't know if everybody here has walked it yet, but on a sunny day, it's a very pleasant 2-mile walk from one end to the other and back. 4,900 feet, I believe. And as I mentioned, we have one place that over the winter washed out. It came from a discharge, one of the pipes out of the retaining wall at Costco, and all it did was wash some of the wood chips off the trail. So we're going to take a look at that and fix it so that doesn't happen in the future. We've also completed Tamarack, and as I mentioned, the landscape berm down at the southwest corner the berm itself has been constructed. We're holding off on, we've stabilized the berm. We're holding off on the final landscaping until we make sure that the berm is in the right place for any future development. The issue came up last time regarding open space at Evergreen Walk. This is an early plan that shows the land that was not developable. The green areas are the wetland that occur on the site. We clearly cannot do anything with those, and in general have not done anything with the wetland. The ochre-colored area is another area that extends beyond the wetlands that was approved by DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. This is land that they determined if we didn't disturb that land, we would not have to go back to them for approvals in the future. So we've held those lines fairly sacred. And the blue area is the riparian buffer that exists down there that is set at 100 meters off of Plum Gully Brook to the east. Besides taking that land, and you'll see fairly large areas of that are actually upland land that would have been good developable land, but because of the riparian buffer, that was lost. And the riparian buffer isolated 2 other pieces, one near the north end to the west of Plum Gully Brook, and one about halfway down the site, again to the west of Plum Gully Brook, that while they're upland areas, we can't get to them because we'd have to cross wetlands and the riparian buffer and the DEP area to get to it. This does not count any of the other land that has been left open that is part of the various approvals of sites here, because we are required to provide a certain amount of open space, and only portions of that are allowed to be wetland. For example, you'll see that there's 3 detention basins sort of nestled into the rest of the area. 2 of those still remain. The one at the bottom got replaced. It is now further to the west, over near the property line there. But all of that land has been gone, as well as all the other land that was part of the open space we dedicated as we got each site plan approved. Right now, of the 242 acres at Evergreen Walk, the open space, and these areas here are more than 50% of the total of the land area that is not developable. So regarding our piece that we were discussing, Unit 7C, if you look at this, the brown buildings are what are being proposed in this general plan of development. The buildings to the right is Tempo. So you'll see that there's a hatched line, a hatched area along the top, and all those areas along the bottom. Those are wetland areas that occur on the site that are part of what I already showed you. And we felt on this one we wanted to create open space that did not take any of the wetland area. So the area in red is what we're proposing as the specific dedicated open space. It's something just around a little less than 3 acres in size. It is the number of square feet of open space per residential unit that's required by your regulation. Well, I'll leave that until Ron comes. So originally this general plan and all of the documents with it were submitted to the Architectural Design Review Committee back in November of last year. Those have not changed in this application, and we got approval from them, and I believe it was referenced in Michelle Lake's memo, that approval that we got for that. We did delete some uses here, and when we added the residential, and Steve Mitchell will talk to that issue, we were trying to balance the deletion of some use and the addition of the residential so that there was no impact on the traffic. And that was basically the only changes we made. Parcels remaining in Evergreen Walk still to be developed. I mentioned one, Unit 7E, which is the one near the south end of the site, just north of the hotel and the daycare center. Unit 5, which is up along the frontage of Buckland Road, just south of what's now Esporta, used to be LA Fitness. And that, as you know, has been in here for approval by this commission for a bank on the site with potential future development, and that property has now been sold to that entity who will develop the bank. And then Unit 8, which is the unit immediately north of Unit 7C, the next one up on the west side of Tamarack Avenue. That was approved by this commission for independent senior living, and that is still what we are pursuing with a potential developer on that site. Those are the remaining parcels of land other than 7C at Evergreen Walk. So as has been discussed, the general description of what we propose to do on Unit 7C is to construct 165 units. There will be 83 one-bedroom units and 82 two-bedroom units so that we do not exceed your 50% requirement. The project has been designed to meet and exceed the requirements of the gateway regulations for a multi-use facility. In conformance with the regulations, we're providing buffers to adjacent residentially zoned property. As I mentioned, 50% or less of the units on the site will be two-bedroom. We have provided, as I noted, more than the 750 square feet of open space per unit, nearly 850 square feet per unit in that red area that I had shown you on the plan. This excludes other areas on the site that could qualify as open space. It also excludes any wetland on the property, and it is all upland area, land that could otherwise be developed. We have made, there are provisions in this for pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, and Howard Rappaport will address those. The parking required is, by your regulations, is 1.75, and what is proposed to be provided is 1.89 parking spaces per unit. Infrastructure issues will be addressed at the site plan, although Ron Bomijan will give you a little more detail on the water and sanitary sewer in a minute. Roadways and utilities will be owned and maintained by an entity other than the town of South Windsor as required. We will address solid waste disposal at the final site plan. And the general plan of development conforms to the requirements of section 8.6.3 of the zoning regulations. That's requirements for a special exception, or for a general plan. We are also requesting the special exception because the text amendment as proposed is a special exception requirement, and so that is what we are requesting, is the 165 units on this site. And Howard will address those issues when he speaks to you. The criteria for approval for the special exception is that the location of this multifamily use is fully integrated with other commercial, retail, office, and recreational uses, using the same roads, utilities, are integrated, and it is of excellent design. 2, that through use of natural features, woodlands and wetlands, and man-made features, landscape berm and additional landscaping that is being installed, for example, the site is appropriately buffered from adjacent residential. 3, that the product is designed to meet the legal requirements for the disabled. We clearly have to do that. That's state mandate, and that's what will be done. And it's enforced through the building code at final site plan and a building permit. The site is within reasonable pedestrian proximity to shopping and services. The proposal meets the requirements of the zoning regulations. The site is physically suited for the proposed use. This site has a slope down continues the slope that existed before of 5% from east to west. There is a large detention basin at the west side. The design that has been proposed takes advantage of that, with many of the units overlooking this basin. And if you've walked down there, I think Jeff Folger would agree, it's a really nice facility, a great habitat area, and the design takes advantage of that. There'll be minimal adverse environmental impacts, and the character of the neighborhood will be maintained. It's separated from all the other residential by fairly wide wooded areas, and it abuts, the only thing in Evergreen Walk that it abuts is the Tempo apartments. There are also, to our knowledge, no historic factors in the area that need to be protected. Then I'd call on Ron Bominger.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Ron Bominger, a professional engineer with Fussin O'Neill, and my role tonight is to just discuss this utility impact statement. That's a living document that we have revised several times as the general plan of development gets updated over the years. On the cover sheet, you can see there's at least 7 or 8 revision dates on there for the times that we have modified this document. So as we come forward with a revised general plan of development, we update the utility demands on the infrastructure at Evergreen Walk and South Windsor, and we take a look at what those changes are going to be for what's already been constructed. More recently is the Costco, and then what is still left to be developed and what we're changing as part of that general plan of development. What you can see on the screen now is the overall plan view of the sanitary sewer system infrastructure that's currently built in solid green line and dashed line, which is going to be future built. The plan that you see on the screen is an older version. The report that you were provided has the more recent figure. Because the sanitary sewer that support the Costco has been constructed, that should be a solid green line. There is a few segments that are remaining to be built, and that's all really going to be supporting the proposed development in the future. This is again, an older version of the overall water layout. This is the water utility infrastructure for Evergreen Walk. Solid blue line is what's already been constructed, and the dashed blue line is what's being proposed for future. Again, the dashed blue line around the Costco connecting south to north and around the east side, should be solid blue. And then, of course, the connector between the Old Navy area and south to Unit 7E, which has the control, crosses the wetland area over that newly constructed road that we just finished this past fall. That should be solid as well. So we have a complete loop now from south to north of all the water infrastructure for Evergreen Walk. And then really just the remaining pieces of water is just going to support Unit 7E and a small portion around that Old Navy Plaza there. So we took a look at all of the impacts. What we do is we'll take a look at the overall demand with the changes that we made. And if there's any change that increases what has been improved in the past, we will go back to the utility companies and coordinate with them, make sure that the supply is there for the demand that we're proposing. In this case, we have no increase in any of the demands that we're proposing as part of this general plan development. There are some utility letters in this report. We reached out to Connecticut Water, I believe gas, electric, and there's adequate utilities to provide this modified general plan of development. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Steve Mitchell. I am with Mitchell Traffic Engineering in Enfield, Connecticut, and I have been working on the various traffic plans for Evergreen Walk over the last 20 plus years, and I've prepared a short traffic report which was part of your packets. Just briefly to go over the specific general plan changes of development that we were looking at for this proposal. First of all, presently on Unit 7C, there's a small amount of retail use, 9,209 square feet and 46 parking spaces, and that is proposed to be relocated over to Unit 8, which was one of the very few undeveloped parcels still on the site at this point. In addition, in the old plan, there are 30,950 square feet of office use with 70 parking spaces, and those are proposed to be eliminated. So then 7C would be developed instead with the 165 units of residential apartments with 313 parking spaces. So the traffic effect essentially is taking out the 30,950 of office and putting in the 165 dwelling units of residential. So I know there are a couple of new commissioners, so I'll just briefly describe how we do trip generation. Over the past 40 years or so, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is a nationwide organization of transportation professionals, engineers and planners, they have gathered actual traffic counts of actual facilities all over the United States. So we're not, very imaginative. We just go out and count the cars. So if it's a residential development, we will count how many vehicles are entering and exiting that development. We typically look at the daily traffic for the 24-hour period. We look for the morning peak hour when the commuting traffic is high, the afternoon peak hour when the commuting traffic is high. Excuse me. And in a retail area, we also look at the Saturday midday period, peak hour, which is when the shopping traffic is at its highest, and that's usually right around noon. So those counts have all been gathered into a gigantic database, which we can access and use that database with linear regression formulas to determine how many trips will be developed, generated by a new development of one type or another. So that database is what I've used here, looking at the office development and the number of trips it would be expected to generate, and you can see there in a total over the course of a day, 1,100 trips, that's entering and exiting. Morning peak hour 86, afternoon peak hour 107, and Saturday peak hour 102. And I should point out that the office development we used here, there are different types of office developments broken down within the database. And we used medical office buildings, since that is what is on the site in other places, so we assumed it would be the similar type of development. So those are what would be generated under the current plan. And then under the proposed plan, we do the same thing with 165 residential dwelling units, and we use a multifamily type of mid-rise multifamily development. And we see we have just under 900 daily trips, 59 in the morning, 73 in the afternoon, 76 on Saturday. So you can see across the board on the daily traffic and each of the peak hours, we are actually reducing the trip generation as a result of this proposed change. So, and these numbers are not very big. I think at the earlier hearing, I noted that the overall development is generating like 35,000 trips in the course of a day. So these are very, very small changes, but nonetheless, from a traffic impact, from a safety and operations impact, the proposal is to reduce the traffic. So we see no impact of negative nature of any kind. And that's my entire report, so thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Again, Mike Goldman, Principal at Goldman & York in East Hartford. And I'm just going to walk you through our report very quickly. We touched on this earlier: office, retail, and hotels, low demand, increasing vacancy. All those sectors are in some degree of trouble. On the other hand, warehouse, self-storage, and apartments, strong demand, lots of activity, very high investor interest. And lastly, on this question of horizontal mixed use, that's the driver of a lot of the activity that we see. As I mentioned earlier, we're working in Manchester on the Parkade site. The idea there is to develop residential to help support adjacent retail and food and beverage. We just finished our assignment in East Hartford, or at least our latest assignment in East Hartford, on the old Showcase Cinema site, again, adjacent to an important retail component in East Hartford, and that'll be roughly 420 units of residential. So those are just two of many examples where this pattern has emerged, and it's a very strong form of development. Moving on, again, I touched on this a little bit: slow growth in Connecticut, job growth stagnant, population growth very low, especially when you adjust for the higher rates of growth in New London and Fairfield County. We're not at a replacement level in fertility, well below that. And as I mentioned earlier, Windsor is a little bit older than the state of Connecticut and the U.S. As well. And these are age pyramids, 2010 on the left, 2021 on the right. And really it's just simply a way to sort of visualize what's happening and see how the age cohorts are getting older and older here in Connecticut. This breaks down your school age population from 2020 to 2040, so projecting it out in 5-year increments. And you can see that the various cohorts, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19. The point here really is just simply to show that really what's happening in all these cohorts is essentially they're staying flat in terms of total numbers, or in some cases a slight decline. This is a quick look at your housing and school district enrollments. A lot of this information is probably familiar to you. 82% single family, 86% owner occupied, 70% 3 or more bedrooms. Your high water mark in enrollment was 2001 at 5,100. They declined by 356. Your low water mark, so to speak, was 4,151 in 2015. And we see this in most towns around Connecticut. I was on the Board of Ed in my town here in Connecticut for 17 years, and our numbers were almost identical. 5,000. We actually dropped to 3,800. So very common throughout the state of Connecticut. Overall, you can see the enrollment for statewide since 2007, pardon me, over 61,000, almost 62,000 less students. So, and if we look at it on a household basis, the statewide enrollment's 0.372 compared to you at South Windsor, just a little more than that, 0.435, but you were down again from 2010. Again, on housing and enrollments, 2010 to 2021, the previous slide we looked at sort of 2000 versus 21. Now we're looking at 2010 to 2021. During that time, you added just a little over 600 housing units. At the same time, enrollments increased by 603. However, you had the sales of existing homes accounted for most of that new 603 school enrollments. And that's simply turnover in your housing stock. That's people like me. My kids are growing, they've left school. I sell my house and a family moves in, and that shows up in the enrollments. Newly constructed MFR, multifamily renter or apartments, account for the 230 units, account for only 6.1 or 37 of the 603 since 2015. At the same time, your Board of Ed budget as a percentage of your total budget, the town's budget, dropped from 67 to 61% in the last year, 2021. Perhaps importantly, our data shows that the per pupil expenditures have decreased since 2016. The proposed units of 165 will generate 30 new school district enrollments based on your actual enrollments from recently constructed apartments. And this breaks it down year by year. I don't need to walk you through that, but it's in your package of information, and you can see at the bottom 2013 moving up to 2021, and the totals showing at the top between new housing and enrollments, just kind of a repeat and a little deeper dive into the data there. So let's get down to the net fiscal impact. We'll look at revenues first. Using your current mill rate, these units, the proposed units, would generate about $711,000 in real property taxes. Of course, we estimate motor vehicles and WPCA user fees that will generate additional revenue, and that gets us to the $855,490 estimate. So if we look at, we've looked at revenues, now we look at your costs, your expenditures. We allocated the education expenditures for those 30 new enrollments. That came out to the $277,000. In addition to school enrollments, of course, you've got general government service. That came out to just about $159,000, and combined, the total is $436,447. So, we put together a little spreadsheet, and we look at the total revenues and the minus the total expenses, and we get an estimated positive fiscal impact in a year of $419,000. And this is simply summarizing the data that was on the previous slides. In addition to that, then there's some one-time fees for land use and building permits and WPCA sewer connections. So that's a one-time hit of approximately $460,000. Jobs, this is an issue in every community that we work in. The estimate there is 47 full-time on the construction side during the construction period, and long-term 18 full-time after the construction. The important thing, though, to keep in mind is that you now have 165 new units that have come into the market. That has a certain number of, we estimate the population, we estimate from that population the total discretionary spending and then the consumer spending. So the result of that is estimated to be a little over $7 million in total discretionary spending and almost $3 million in consumer spending at your local businesses. So, and that's kind of the crux of why this works so well. You're trying to bring those people who are living and working and playing in the near their residence and are going to go into the stores and the food and beverage operations and the personal services and everything that they bring with them. So important contributor to the overall economic base of the community. Thank you.
Yes, he does.
Good evening. My name is Howard Rappaport, and I'm a principal with Continental Properties. By way of background, we are among the largest developers in Connecticut, having developed over 1,200 luxury rental apartments over the past 8 years. We're proud to have developed Tempo, the 200 dwelling unit residential community on adjacent Lot 7B at Evergreen Walk, which we continue to own and to operate. In addition to Tempo, locally, our nearby developments include One Glastonbury, which is 145 dwelling units in Glastonbury, Montage at Rocky Hill, 144 units in Rocky Hill, and Altera in Rocky Hill, also 144 units. As I've expressed before, our expertise, our true skill set, is in building amenity-rich, modern rental communities. Our communities are truly Class A. We are a privately held company that has been building since 1957, so for 65 years. And a major feature that I think differentiates us is that we are generational holders, meaning that we do not build with the intention of selling our communities. Long-term ownership provides your municipality with stable management, one constant contact, and long-term curb appeal for the community, and better quality design and construction, because we have a longer time horizon. Regarding the design and development objectives, we are again excited to potentially have the opportunity to develop another residential community here at Evergreen Walk. We continue to regard Evergreen Walk as the premier lifestyle center in the greater Hartford submarket, if not the entire state, and believe that a new residential community combined with the recent opening of Costco and the planned opening of Whole Foods will further enhance Evergreen Walk's position in the post-COVID marketplace. Our objective here is to create a new residential community that is distinct from Tempo. Although Tempo has been and remains very successful, we intentionally are not building a so-called Tempo 2. Our goal with this residential community is to serve the general welfare of the town of South Windsor by providing a new housing type not currently available in the market, giving residents another choice for their type of home that they live in. We want to create a community which complements the neighborhood of the site while at the same time satisfying what we believe is an unmet need for housing type not currently available in town. So to that end, we've charged our design team with the task of creating an aesthetically pleasing community that blends into the architecture of the surrounding area. In doing so, we believe we've created a physical appearance for the proposed new community that complements the scale and architectural style of adjacent buildings. Just to provide some context, Tempo, the existing community, offers exclusively 3-story walk-up 24-unit buildings with common interior hallways and surface parking. In contemplating the design of a new residential community here on Unit 7C, a primary goal was to introduce new housing opportunities from Tempo and from the other housing opportunities at Evergreen Walk. In order to fulfill that objective, the majority of our residential units, 115 out of 165 as proposed, are what we call cottage-style dwelling units. Cottage-style units allow residents to have their own front entry that is not on a common interior hallway and a direct entry to their own individual garage. Unlike Tempo, this cottage style of living is not a congregate form of living in that there are no common interior hallways or common interior staircases. In keeping with our goal to provide different housing opportunities at Evergreen Walk, we have also included one 4-story building of 38 units that is serviced by an elevator. We're confident, based on our development experience throughout the state, that there is a demographic that will be very attracted to a building serviced by an elevator with a lavish lobby. Although this is actually a form of congregate living, it's different form than is available at Tempo because of the inclusion of the elevator in the lobby. The final building that is proposed on Unit 7C is a 3-story walk-up building of 12 units. We intend to have the interior design of this small building have the feel of a so-called boutique hotel with specialty millwork, ceramic tile, art, and upgraded lighting, all of which are not present in a Tempo building. So this is a higher level of finish for this walk-up building. Our final design objective is to, in all of our communities, not just the proposed community, but particularly here, is to develop a project that will have a sense of place. Prospective residents, we have found, move to our developments for the different housing opportunities that I've articulated, but they also move because they're attracted to being part of a community and the stimulation that it provides. So building a sense of community is critical. At Continental Properties, we have a demonstrated track record of carefully paying attention to the common elements where our residents can gather and socialize, and our indoor amenity spaces and outdoor spaces are meticulously designed to promote this sense of community. I'd like to provide just a brief overview of the residential program. It is comprised of a lavish clubhouse with plus 14 buildings in total on the entire site. There are 12 cottage-style buildings comprised of 11 buildings of 10 units each and 1 building of 5 units. So that's the 115 cottage-style units. In addition, there's the previously mentioned 4-story 38-unit building and the 3-story 12-unit building. The 165 dwelling units are a mix of 1 bedrooms plus home offices, and also 2 bedrooms. The clubhouse will feature a club room, a catering kitchen, and a state-of-the-art fitness center for use by our residents. There will be a resort-quality pool, including cabanas, a fire pit, and either bocce or some form of a putting green, I think. The amenity program, similar to what we have built throughout the state, will be first class, and touching on what Mike mentioned before, this will be a highly amenitized, essentially amenity-rich community. Walkability and sustainability are also important to us. The proposed community, as we have discussed and has been articulated, is distinguished by its close proximity to the promenade shops and its restaurants and shopping, and our sidewalk network will make a connection to the existing sidewalks for easy access to the promenade shops. We're also committed to sustainability. Continental was the first developer in the state of Connecticut to include EV car chargers at a residential community. That was in Rocky Hill 9 years ago in 2013. All of our communities, including this one, include EV car charging stations. Likewise, all of our Continental communities include, including this proposed community, include a communal bike share program where our residents can have use of one of our bikes for their use and enjoyment for the afternoon. Access to bikes is more important than ever, and we will also have bike racks dispersed throughout the community. In summary, we believe that the residential proposal is the appropriate use for this property. We have very purposefully designed Unit 7C to have a less intensive use than Unit 7B, where Tempo is located. And that lower density is principally the result of utilizing the 2-story cottage-style buildings on the property. We believe that the mix of housing opportunities will ensure a dynamic, intergenerational community. The new housing opportunities provided by Unit 7C will be complementary to the housing at Tempo and to the other housing at Evergreen Walk. And more broadly, any other use other than a residential use on Unit 7C would generate more traffic, which we believe would be incompatible with Tempo. An added inherent benefit to a new residential community on Unit 7C is that more residents will support the promenade shops and contribute to its sustainability. In summary, therefore, our objective is to create another best-in-class modern rental community of which the stakeholders of South Windsor will be proud. Thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I think we're done. Yes, we are, Commissioner Wagner. For the record, Chris Smith, and that concludes our presentation relative to the request to amend the general plan and special exception approvals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I will turn to our town staff, Jeff Folger.
Okay, I'll read a report, again, from the Planning Department based on this application, application 2208P, Evergreen Walk Multifamily General Plan Update. This is a request to modify the Evergreen Walk General Plan of Development in accordance with Section 4.2.15D.2 and a special exception to Section 4.2.15D.1 for a 165-unit residential development for a portion of 151 Buckland Road within Evergreen Walk, known as Unit 7C, and being approximately 2,000 feet west of Buckland Road and 1,000 feet north of Smith Street, Buckland Road Gateway Development Zone. The change to Unit 7C in the general plan include the elimination of 30,950 square feet of office use, including 70 parking spaces from the general plan. Remove all detail from Unit 7C, 9,209 square feet and 46 parking spaces, and relocate it to Unit 8A and Unit 8, and adds 165 units of multifamily on Unit 7C with 313 parking spaces. The applicant's request is also for a special exception for the 165 housing units, showing units, special exception review criteria listed on 4.2.15D.4 include the location of the multifamily residential use is fully integrated with other commercial, retail, office, and recreational uses. The proposed multifamily residential use shall be appropriately buffered from adjacent residential uses. The multifamily residential use has been designed to meet the legal requirements for the disabled, and whether the site either is or will be within reasonable pedestrian proximity to shopping, services, and institutions as are routinely required by the future residents of the site. A 75-foot buffer is required along the residential zone boundaries and has been shown on the development plan in addition to the required setback line. A detailed landscaping plan will be required, calling out specific species of trees and plants with sizes proposed. Recently, a berm was constructed along the southwesterly property boundary. The PZC approved this berm last year. The open space requirement for the residential development is 750 square feet for each residential unit. It is the applicant's intent to meet this requirement by providing the clubhouse and continuation of the trail system adjacent to the residential area and extending west on the site. Pedestrian access has been provided throughout the site. With the original approval of the apartments, the developer completed the sidewalk connection to the south side of Tamarack from the new development up to tie in with the existing sidewalk. Additionally, the developer installed a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Tamarack and Evergreen Way. This proposal will have sidewalk linkages into the existing Tempo project, and staff have requested that there be a road connection between the two developments as well. A traffic report was submitted, and Table 1 provides a land use summary table, summary showing the square footages of the residential uses and total square footages of the new general plan development. The Mitchell report concludes with the introduction of the residential uses and elimination of commercial uses. There will be a reduction in the traffic, approximately 200 less vehicles per day. The applicant will be required to return to SDC to modify their approval. Such approval is required to be in place prior to the issuance of building permits. Public water and sewer are available. The applicant submitted a utility statement indicating the availability of utilities for this project. WPCA approval will be required, as well as approval from Connecticut Water Company. There are regulated wetlands on the site in the vicinity of the apartments. A site plan submission to IWACC would be required as well. The Architectural and Design Review Committee reviewed the architectural design and concept layout on November 4th. The committee was pleased with the designs and materials presented and forwarded a favorable recommendation. The applicant would return to the ADRC as a part of the site plan process to review final designs, lighting, and landscaping. If this application is approved, in addition to the existing conditions of the general plan, the Planning Department requests the following. Site plan of development approval is required prior to construction, per section 4.2.15.d of the zoning regulations. Construction phasing must be included on the site plan of development if appropriate. As required in section 4.2.15.2d, the applicant shall present their proposal and schedule to meet the 2-to-1 ratio, residential to commercial ratio as the phasing and the project progresses. A table of ratios and uses, the construction timeline and proposed phasing narrative is also required. Finally, no building permits will be issued until any required SDC approval has been issued per CGS 14-311. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. Just one comment, which Jeff Folger alluded to. The general plan showed one main access into this development. We'd like a second access to connect this to Tempo. So there are 2 access points in and out of this development. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris, could you come to the podium for a minute? You heard the town engineer's comments on that and Jeff Holder's. Does the applicant have any issue with that?
Is that something we have to look into at this point? Mr. Chairman, so for the record, Chris Smith, Mr. Chairman, that we can accommodate that comment.
Okay, thank you.
Recommendation from Mr.
Yep.
Doolittle.
Okay. Great. At this time, we're going to turn to the public and just note for the record that the applicant is willing and encouraged the inclusion of the previously read letters from the previous application, or not from the previous application, from the application on the agenda before this one tonight to be included in the record. But I will ask, is there any members of the public who would like to speak on this application? Please step forward.
Got one question. James King, J. Shepherd Company, resident here in South Windsor. I just wanted to know if there's anything with water recapture, solar, Doosan fuel cells or anything?
If you could, please address the chair.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I was just curious about sustainability, any water recapture, any Doosan fuel cells or solar panels for just the environmental impact on this project.
Okay, thank you. We'll address that. Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Please step forward. Anyone like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Viteri.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions. On the 10% affordable housing piece that you had, is there any breakdown between the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom, or has that been thought out at this point?
It is pro rata in accordance with the overall.
If you could just reintroduce yourself.
Howard Rappaport Continental Properties. I believe your question is, what is the bedroom breakdown of the 10% affordable units?
Right.
And it would have the same 50-50 breakdown that we have for the overall number of units. That's the way we do it on projects.
Okay, so with rounding, it would be 9 of each.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
All right, and then car chargers, you had mentioned there would be car charging stations.
It will be.
Any particular number?
Probably about 4, based on our experience. And what we will do is we'll provide for future use. What we're seeing is that year over year, there are more and more car chargers that are needed. So when we first started in Rocky Hill in 2013, 1 car charger was sufficient. Now we have found that probably 4 works, but what we do is we'll make provisions in the underground to be able to expand that, because that is proliferating every year. So
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Good.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
Yeah, I just had a quick question regarding, I'm looking at the plans, and I saw a few artist renderings of how the housing will look, and I saw a couple plans, or actually photos, that had sidewalks and others did not. There's cars and people on the road, and I didn't see sidewalks around through the neighborhood. To me, that's a huge public safety concern with people texting and all that, and people walking in the street. I just don't think it's a good idea. From a development standpoint, it cuts down on maintenance in the winter for maintaining sidewalks, but I really feel that this project should have them.
You want to address that to anybody specifically to get an answer, or?
Yeah, would somebody speak on that behalf?
For the record, Ron Bomjan, Fuss and O'Neill. Howard just directed me, as we get into the detailed site plan, we can certainly look at how to accommodate the sidewalks in front and around all these the residential buildings.
For the record, Chris Smith, and that would be part of the next step with the site plan. But if the commission were to see fit to approve the special exception, that could certainly be a condition that that be included with the site plan.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. So, in the previous 2 applications that were turned down, the reason the plan of development was turned down was because it didn't conform to the zoning, because the zoning had been rejected. So my question is this really the same as what we saw previously, or are there other changes in here?
Commissioner Wagner, it's my understanding it's essentially the same. The site development with the special exception.
Okay. I was going to also ask about the sidewalks, and I can see on your sheet 3 that there are sidewalks in some areas and not in other areas, so I have the same concern. On the other hand, a lot of these buildings have garages, right? So it's a little hard to work sidewalks in front of garages. But I'd like to, maybe they have back doors and there can be sidewalks and back doors, but I'd like to see sidewalks as much as possible in the site plan. On EV chargers, thank you, Mr. Terry, for bringing that up. Be sure you check our zoning regulations. If you have garages in a multifamily, they must be wired to support EV charging inside the garage. So that doesn't mean you have to have a charger in there, but they ought to have the dryer outlet kind of plug inside there. Okay. I saw solar on some of the renditions in the slides that you just showed. I saw some solar panels, and then others did not. I believe that the current regulations from Pure are becoming more and more favorable to including solar in multifamily developments and giving the credits for the solar to the residents. So I'd like to see on your site plan solar being used everywhere. Okay. And that brings up one other utility question, and the gentleman who spoke about utilities, if you'd come forward. I've tried to catch your name, but it just didn't happen.
Ron Bomingen.
Ron, okay. More and more our state and energy experts are trying to move away from using natural gas and instead making all of our heating and air conditioning be electric. Well, the air conditioning would have been electric anyway, but this may involve the use of ground sourced heat pumps or whatever, but trying not to add that much more burning of hydrocarbon fuel from 165 residents that would be moving in here. So I hope you will be looking at in your site plan a way to avoid continuing the natural gas line into the site. And I'll offer you a chance to comment on that.
Yeah, so as we get into the detailed site plan design and we introduce the other teaming partners like the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, they will look at how the building systems themselves can function more efficiently to be basically a cheaper operating system for the owner. So they're going to do whatever is most efficient. We have seen more and more developments go to electric. So that is a possibility, but that has not been worked out, and that won't happen for quite some time.
I guess I'm going to have a really hard time if I see a gas line coming in this. I'm not saying one way or the other how I'll vote, but you'll get a lot of comments on that. The gentleman who came up and spoke asked about water recapture and actually also solar, so maybe you could comment on those two subjects.
Yeah, so Howard, I can comment on water recapture. You know, that's something that's also looked at. It's, you know, it became more and more popular when LEED came out, where, you know, the United States Green Building Council and these other agencies came up with ways to be more efficient and to have less impacts on the environment. It is not a cheap method of water recapture. Certainly, I'm sure that he's going to have a design team to take a look at whether or not they can recapture for irrigation or for gray water, things like that. We have not seen it in multifamily housing as of late. We have seen more solar. We have seen more, let's see what else. It's really come down to solar at this point for these style multifamily housing.
Okay, I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, would you step to the microphone, please? You had mentioned the walking trail was complete, and I just had a question on that. Originally, when Tempo was built, there was an entrance to the walking trail that was, and I'm going to try and lay it out, east of the driveway entrance that leads into like the clubhouse of Tempo. And it was across the access road that continued on. And it doesn't appear in your general plan drawing that connects with the rest of the walking trail. I'm wondering if you can maybe elaborate on that a little.
The intent is that this piece will be the connector from the walking trail from the roadway that leads down to Tempo and connect to the trail that passes up through the rest of Evergreen Walk. So I'm not sure what was there. Some of the paths that were originally put in, I know Howard put paths in across 7C, but they've overgrown because there's nobody there to maintain them or do that. So the intent is that this will be the link between that. So I'm not sure what up in Tempo got built, but that interconnection will be made, and we would certainly show that on the final site plan.
Okay. All right. That's about all I have right now. Pardon me? Oh, oh my God. It's late. I apologize,
I
Commissioners.
have nothing that hasn't already been asked.
Commissioner Cavagnero?
Thank you. I have a few things, realizing that they may pertain to site plan. I'll just go over them briefly, not as questions, just as comments. Again, going off of a few commissioners with sidewalks, stress it since we talk about having walkability among this community and all our communities that connect to Evergreen Walk. So just wanted to put that on the record with sidewalks, hoping down the line that can be explored, because again, I didn't see that many on here, but then again, it's a general plan that we have here. Also, I noticed on 2207, I mentioned bike racks, and on the presentation, it showed a couple bike racks as well. I assume, again, once we go into more detail of that, there could be bike racks located across this application, of course. I remember when we approved Whole Foods almost a year ago, I don't know how I remember this, but we talked about bike racks as well being implemented there at Whole Foods. And it sort of reminded me that if we have bike racks here, again, within entirety of Evergreen Walk, people will feel more inclined to maybe ride their bike to the other side of Evergreen Walk for commercial use, for example. Just a note that I remembered on that. I guess my next thing is a question for town staff. I just remembered it. By any chance, would you guys know the closest bus stop to, of course, public bus stop to these apartments? I'm just curious. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, we think it's on the corner, or up by the corner of Buckland and Tamarack.
Buckland and Tamarack, okay. I asked that because I remember a couple meetings ago when we were discussing our affordable housing plan, Commissioner Qureshi brought up a great point about more public transit within our mixed-use developments like this, for example, in multifamily. I just wasn't sure if that was something in the future. And again, this is just a thought, wasn't really pertaining to this in general. Having more bus stops available to these developments to, again, to cut down on just people driving in general. We talk about how this application will cut down on 200 car trips a day. If we expand bus stops in this area, we could cut that down even further. It was just a thought. And then my last question will actually be for the applicant here. This was asked as well back on the former application, and I did a little bit of research on the existing apartments at Evergreen Walk in terms of rent. I know that you probably don't have a defined answer, but looking on Zillow, I can see the rent range anywhere from $1,500 to $2,100. I'm not sure if you can verify if it'll be something similar for these 165 units, because I know you said they're a little bit different than the existing ones. I was just hoping for a more clear answer.
Thank you for the thoughtful question. I think that generally speaking, the range will be the same. However, the cottage-style units have each of them have a garage in them. So included in that rent will be the access to a private garage. So that rent will be, on a blended basis, will seem higher than at Tempo, because people have access to go right from their apartment into the garage. So there'll be a premium for those units, I think.
All right, thank you. I just wanted that on the record.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I love the public input mentioning solar, for example. Just wanted to put that out there. And last but not least, we talked about again, the affordable housing plan that we just recently passed. I know it's not in effect yet, but it calls for housing diversity and expanding our palette, I guess, of housing across, and this application does it. And I'll say it again, I don't see anything wrong with it at the moment. Of course, there are areas to expand, like bike racks and sidewalks, and I even forgot to mention, of course, when going off of Commissioner LeBlanc on the speeds, for example, and I mention this all the time because I love speed bumps and speed humps and raised crosswalks, because they're a mitigator for people to slow down and remind themselves that they are in a residential zone, keeping it 15 or below, for example, or at 10. So of course, that'll be expanded on later down the line. But yeah, those are all the comments and questions I had. I just had a lot in my mind looking through this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Carey.
Thank you. People have asked all the questions I had, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, in the late hour, I'm hoping the applicant is willing that we continue the public hearing to our next meeting date, May 24th, yes. Okay, thank you. So Commissioners, could we have a motion to continue the public hearing to Commissioner Viteri?
I move that we continue the meeting to 11 o'clock.
No, to May 24th.
Oh, I'm sorry, to May 24th. I was just trying to.
A second.
Yeah, I move that we
Okay.
continue to May 24th.
We have a motion, a second. Yep. Any comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Go ahead. Yep. Commissioners, it is late, but if we could just have a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes to tie up some loose ends. If somebody would extend the meeting until, Commissioner Viteri. Just for 10 minutes or so.
I move we extend the meeting for 10 more minutes till 10:37.
Say 10:45.
10:45.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That was your last motion. Okay. Let me get back to my agenda. I've got so many papers here. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to call our, excuse me, any conversations, we're still going. If you could, please bring them out into the lobby. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'm calling our regular meeting to order for Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. Our first item on our agenda is public participation. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda tonight? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move right in. Lightning Fitness. We heard that tonight, and there's, I think, nothing open, so under discussion or a motion, Commissioner Dexter?
I can make a motion to approve application 22-15P, Lightning Fitness Facility. This approval is for Lightning Fitness Facility for approximately 28,000 square foot of the existing building at 85 Nutmeg Road North as shown on the approved site plan. Then we have 4 more standard approvals. Number 6 is a building permit is required for the change of use of the additional square footage. And I think we added number 7, that the hours would be 24/7.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Viteri, any discussion?
Since I missed that public hearing, I will not be participating in this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dexter, did you have something else? Oh, okay, I saw the light on. If there's no further discussion, I just want to remind the commissioners, with only 5 members voting, we need 4 for an approval for any application. Okay, so we have motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Let the record reflect the motion was unanimous. Thank you. the J.E. Shepherd. Do we have any, we do have somebody from J.E. Shepherd.
My name is James King, Senior Asset Manager for J. Shepherd Company.
Okay. And do you have a presentation or anything, or?
No, this was a continuation from the last meeting that I couldn't attend. I guess there are some questions on the mobile office that we have over at 195 Governor's Highway for the continual use permit.
Right. Okay. So
We're still using it just as we normally have, and I was wondering if we could just continue the 2-year extension.
okay. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll turn to Jeff Folger, sitting in for Michelle Light, for his report.
Sure. The request is for application 22-12P, Shepherd Modular Office TNC permit renewal. The request for renewal of a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for a modular office at 195 Governor's Highway Industrial Zone. This temporary and conditional permit was originally granted in 1991. The office area is approximately 880 square feet, and it is located slightly outside of the building line along Governor's Highway. The modular office is currently not in use. In 2018, the commission approved the permit with the condition that the property be brought into compliance before renewing the permit again. However, it was renewed in 2020. The wording of the TNC permit regulation is that temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after a public hearing if, in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. If this application is approved, the planning department has no modifications to request.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn to town engineer.
Thank you. I have no comments on this
Okay,
application.
thank you. Then at this time, I'm turning to commissioners. I don't see any lights on, oh, okay.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Cavagna?
I'll make a motion. We approve application 22-12P. The permit is for a 2-year renewal and will expire on May 10th, 2024. If this use is to continue beyond that date, a renewal will be required.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay. Discussion. Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, it says on here that the building, the temporary, or
Or three.
the modular office is located slightly outside the building line along Governor's Highway. Does that mean it's actually not in conformance with the setbacks, or what does that mean?
Yes. It means it's over the line it's supposed to be on.
Okay, so,
The line that was approved.
and then they were supposed to fix that or not?
Well, the last, as it said in 2018, they were supposed to come back with a plan, because, and you have the floor, so I
Yeah,
don't.
Go ahead and answer, yeah.
Okay. They were going to come back for a use because, we were told at that time that it was not being used other than for storage. It wasn't being used for its original intent, and it was a 2-year temporary and conditional permit, which started in 1991. So it's really been 31 years that this temporary building has been there. And the report, as it says in number 3 for our report, that it's not currently in use. I have heard, there might be some stuff just stored there, but the use has really expired. And to continue this is really, would just be a mockery of the temporary and conditional permit. So, under discussion, I cannot support it. It's not there for its original use anymore. It's temporary and conditional. Does 31 years seem temporary and conditional? I just, it just doesn't make sense to me. Commissioner Wagner had his light on. And then
Yeah, so that was going to be my second question. So are there special requirements for modular buildings as opposed to any other building? I mean, a modular office, this is not something with wheels on it, right?
It's a modular building. It can be, I believe it can be moved, but it's been hardwired into the building. We've got large arborvitaes that block it. So it would take a little bit to move it. It's not like it's just parked there and plugged in with an outlet. So there is more than just unplugging and moving it in a few feet to go back over the line.
Well, I mean, maybe Mr. Doolittle can explain to me what's the difference between a modular building and any other building.
Well, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the use is over. I mean,
Well,
the intended use originally, 31 years ago, is no longer, correct?
Well, I'm not sure what the exact use was 30 years ago, but as far as I know, it's been used, it was used for temporary offices when they had projects going on. It has been used. It kind of goes off and on. I'm not sure if it's used right now, but it has in the past. So I'm not sure, like I said, the intended use 30 years ago, but I believe it is used off and on.
Okay. We'll turn to, I believe, Jeff Doolittle. You were going to respond to Steve, or was that Jeff Folger? I see both your lights on. That's why I'm asking.
Either one, but I
We
think.
can try. So it's probably determined by the building code, but the example I'll use is at the schools, at Pleasant Valley School, at Old Orchard Hill School. There are temporary modules that were installed, as Mr. King said, semi-permanently. They're hardwired in. They were connected to the building physically, so they have proper access and egress routes and meets all the code. But they are modular units that were put in place. They're not put on a permanent foundation necessarily. I mean, I think they were set on piers maybe, and connected to the building, but with some work, they could be easily removed.
Commissioner Wagner?
Okay, so, I mean, when did the schools come in with a temporary permit, or did they come in with a, building plan?
They came in, I believe, for a temporary permit for these, or a site plan modification at the very
Site plan,
least.
yeah, I mean, why isn't this coming to us as a site plan? That's what I'm kind of heading.
This, I don't believe this fits with setbacks and every other. That's why it had to come in as a temporary and conditional permit. There was nothing else in the regulations that it could come in under because of how it was being located. And as I said, that use is no longer. I mean, it was there for a specific use, and they used it up until, I think, in the 2018, when they came forward to us, they said they were no longer using it for the use that it was.
So to me, I mean, I'm kind of coming around to the point of view that if this thing can't get a site plan approval because it doesn't have the right setbacks, then it needs to be removed at this point.
Okay. Jeff, did you have something else? Or I see your light on, I'm just asking.
No,
Okay.
just in anticipation.
Okay. Commissioners, any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I'll call the motion. All those in favor of approving the temporary and conditional permit removal, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Nay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Viteri? Commissioner Wagner?
Nay.
Commissioner Dexter?
Aye.
Commissioner Cavagnero?
No.
Commissioner Carey is not sitting. no, Commissioner Carey is sitting, sorry.
Nay.
Chairman Pascagonis.
Nay. So the motion fails, 1 in favor, 5 against.
Okay, so direction moving forward on that, is it's been denied, do we need to move?
Correct.
Okay.
I would talk to the town planner when she gets back on Monday.
Okay, in reference to removing it from the property or the line?
Pardon me?
Are we being asked to move it back inside within the line, or?
No,
move
the
it
whole temporary and conditional is over, so.
Okay.
Talk to the town planner on Monday, and
Okay,
she'll fill you in on what needs
Okay.
to be done.
good, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we had some bond reduction. Does everybody have that in front? Commissioner Cavagnero?
Yep. I have one landscaping bond, 18-29P, Harbor Chase, amount 5,000, reduction 5,000, balance 0.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it for discussion purposes. Oh, did you, I didn't look your way.
I was going to second, but no, I'll defer to you.
Okay. Commissioners, any discussion? This is completed 100%? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the reduction, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on minutes, we had 3 months of minutes. I had just one correction on each set of minutes. On April 5th, it was the second paragraph after number 1, where Kathy Kerrigan reviewed the timeline of the proposed amendment, skipped down to the 4th line, was heard at the March 22nd, 2022 meeting. However, due to an issue raised of filing timeline, not filling. That was the only thing on that one. On April 12th, I just had one correction on page 3. The word "one" was left off on number 5. It says, however, only, and it was silent, only one field has been utilized. And on the 12th, that was the 12th, the 19th, here it is. On my statement on page 4, halfway down the page, at the end of the paragraph, it says Chairman Pascagonis suggested that when a property has wetlands on it, these wetlands should not be included in the minimum lot requirements. And it should say the minimum lot sizes. So if we have a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, then none of it should be wetlands. Wetlands should be in addition to that. So those are my 3 corrections. Does anybody have anything else?
I had one more.
Commissioner Wagner?
April 19, page 2, the 1, 2, 3rd paragraph from the bottom, 1, 2, 3rd line from the end of the, well, actually it's the 4th line. Ms. Light reviewed the regulation requirements for open space, which states that if, it should say 6 or more lots are created. And if you haven't followed me, I can give you this. Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have any other corrections, comments? Okay, then we can accept these corrections by consensus. Agreed? Okay. Okay, I think that's what I needed to get done tonight. Jeff, anything need to be mentioned before we adjourn?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn would be in order.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Good night, everybody.